sovereign nation held dope, then gotta make them pay taxes or make them pay something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But it's a tough deal.
Okay, we're all here. We'll go ahead and start. So,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
you have the floor, Barry.
Okay. Barry Tice, Director of Pennington County Health and Human Services. And just a couple of things to start off with or touch on is, as you can see by our budget, there isn't any major changes this year. I wanted to visit with you a little bit about kind of the unpredictable nature of our business, as you are all well aware, and especially when it comes to medical and medications and things like that. We attempt to keep our budget as refined as possible, but those are major issues that we never know what's going to occur with that from year to year. And with the ACA and the continual changes with that, we try to watch how that might affect what's happening within our office. But again, every year it's just one of those kind of wait and see. And so, there's not a lot to report there. One thing is we continue to see an increase in the burials, and just the number of burials we do. And I explained a little bit in the narratives about that in the baby boomer era. And really, it's one of those things where, as good as our office does to try to develop ways to navigate through increased costs, when it comes to burials, there isn't a lot we can do. We have some great relationships with the it just slipped my mind, the funeral homes, and with our geographic location with the National Cemetery, we can utilize that, and also on tribal lands, we work with the tribes as well. But so burials continue to rise. On the economic side, again, there isn't a lot of major changes with that. We can see some dips when it comes to rent and utility assistance, but we always focus on the fact that there's energy assistance during certain months of the year, but that can always change depending on what the state allocates for funding for that, and so that can impact our overall budget. Diversion side of things, I know the sheriff and state's attorney touched on this, but with the MacArthur Foundation, we've been real proactive on our diversion program since 2006, and they're working, and we see a decrease in the rate of incarcerations, but MacArthur will offer us a great opportunity to really dig down and figure out what's being done correctly and what isn't. And a lot of the discussion is on pretrial diversions and things like that. And I think our office can switch some of our focus from the back end to the front end of some of these pretrial diversion initiatives and look at how we might be able to reduce some of the rates of incarceration that way as well. The Veterans Service Office, again, that's one of those areas where we're not making any major adjustments. We continue to focus on Veterans Court Initiative and work on that, and so that's an exciting piece to our office. Grant funding, again, that's one of those, we found multiple opportunities over the past few years to bring in some grant funding to help offset some of the costs when it comes to rent and utilities and some of the things that we're not mandated, the counties are not mandated to pay for. And so that's a great benefit, because in the big scheme of things, if we help out with just a little bit of rent, some of this funding that comes from these outside sources can help create a longer term impact. And so it really does benefit the client, and it benefits taxpayers. So that's exciting, and we'll always look at alternatives such as community development block grants, foundations, and really see what's out there. But grants, like anything else, are pretty unpredictable when it comes to what might be coming up and the timelines. So we keep our eyes peeled for that, and we'll always come back up in front of the commission if we identify something that might prove to help out our agency in the county. Beyond those pieces, I wanted to touch a little bit on the reserve, the Crisis Care Center reserve, and
Can I ask a question on the last? If it's not a mandate for rent and utilities, I'm seeing your revenues and your lien payments and actually how much we get back. Why do you continue to, is it a big portion of what those liens are? How about that aren't getting paid back?
a lot of that is, yes. For the money that we provide assistance for, an example I would use with that would be burial expenses. So often, it's a indigent individual that we provide burial costs for, and they're single individual, no life insurance, nothing else. And so they absorb a lien that could be a couple $1,000s. And we've been doing upwards of, I think last year, $142,000 in burials. And so we've seen a little bit of an increase, and I defer to the auditor's office on this a little bit, but since 2 letters go out a year reminding individuals that there's liens for whatever it might be, whether it's our office or liens that they've incurred while they've been incarcerated, I believe that's increased the repayments that are coming in, but that's one of those things where we haven't found a definite way to encourage repayments, minus our caseworkers do a good job of explaining that when somebody comes in for assistance.
So again, Barry, if it's not mandated, why do we continue to do those payments and do what we're doing? If some of that's not mandated, why not say no?
And I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear on your question, but so the mandated services we do are medical assistance, medications,
Right.
rent, 30, 60, and 90 days past due on utilities, but
Those are mandated.
those are mandated.
I thought you said they weren't. I
No, I'm
apologize.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
And so outside of that, when it comes to deposits, deposit assistance for rentals, that money comes out of our grant funds, so they're not leaned on that. They're only leaned on the dollars that the county assist with.
Okay, I
Sorry.
misunderstood.
No, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
misunderstood the question.
Thank
so-
you.
Sure.
The indigent burial is 143,000? Wow,
341 people.
wow. That's heavy,
It is.
it's heavy.
And I touched on that a little bit in the narrative where the baby boomer era, and you can do, research online and everywhere else and try to figure out what's impacting that. And I use Minnehaha County as an example. They continue to see high rates too, and Minnehaha has a county cemetery, and so it's owned by the county. So those costs, they incur costs through that, but where we really do luck out, I would say, is the fact that we do have a national cemetery, so we can have our veterans buried up there, and so often we can also resort to tribal lands as well. But it's just one of those situations we have really zero control over.
Last week's budget, excuse me, Ron, last week's budget had a couple of vouchers, the vouchers had a couple of $1,700 bills. That's a total bill or that's just one part of that person's bill?
That would probably have been a majority of the bill. We have to pay for vault charges, and whether or not it's a cremation, and then we pay for the plot, and then the opening and closing of the plot. And so, but it's the cost of what we pay compared to what the regular rates are is pretty amazing. So we really do have a good relationship with the funeral homes.
These are not fancy funerals, by the way.
Well,
Did that law ever get passed that we can do cremations if we want to, or we feel like it, or, I can't remember exactly what that law was, but.
If there's,
So that's not so
in my understanding with the cremations is if there's a family member that agrees to it, that the individual can be cremated, then yes. Now I can't, I don't know specifically what occurs.
And the way I remember it was, we thought it was gonna be a good deal, and it really wasn't that much cheaper.
Yeah,
And maybe
Wasn't that
based,
it, something like that? It was,
yeah, no, you're right, it wasn't that big a,
and wasn't any of it based on culture, well, there's a
There's some of that
specification,
too,
you know what I'm
yeah.
saying, so.
okay, thanks, Barry.
Sure.
Just because I got a flannel shirt on?
I'm good.
So
We're all going. I'm good.
is there other questions before we discuss a little? Yes.
I do have one. You know, we've listened to law enforcement and the state's attorney's office so far, and they're showing lots of increases in needs of services. How's that going to affect HHS with the services you provide for the jail? Is that really reflected in here?
It is, on the mental health side, I know Mark Vargo spoke a lot about the increase in mental health petitions or holds, and that can impact our office in multiple ways. One way is we help out with the case management at the crisis care center, so we see a lot of the individuals pass through there. And, you know, with that, it's our goal to try to divert them from a higher level of care when that's not necessary. Now, that means a lot of individuals who might be considered indigent, who have no medication coverage, could come into our office for medications to help with mental health diagnoses until we can find alternative resources for them. So that's definitely an impact. When it comes to just the rate of incarcerations and the number of individuals within our jail, I mean, that's a huge thing for us as well, as working through the rebound program to try to reduce the amount of people recidivating through our jail. And I lost my train of thought. There was one other piece I was gonna touch on with that, and so. But we will feel the effects of that, and when it came to the inmate services budget, that was transferred over to the sheriff's department this year, and that was on the recommendation of the auditors to start combining budgets, but also it made the most sense with the sheriff's department. But the good thing with this is, because we have proven such huge savings when it comes to the individual within our office who pays those bills and tries to identify, you know, if the county is indeed the payer of last resort, or if there's somebody else in there who can absorb the payments. We're seeing a big impact in that too. So these items really do, or I say these items, between the sheriff's department, state's attorney's office, public defender's office, and our office, there's individuals cycle through all of the different departments. And so, you know, I can't emphasize enough the work and relationships we have and how that helps to come up with solutions to these things, because they're expensive. They have huge impacts on everybody's budgets, so.
So Barry, you said future personnel include a medical caseworker in 2017. Maybe I'm getting ahead of what you're talking about, but have you tried partnering or going in with the community health center on some of this? Or is that not a piece of what Health and Human Services does?
It is and it isn't. When it comes to the medications, our partnership with Community Health a lot relies on, they refer an individual over to our office to seek specialty care, and so we have to process that application to see if indeed we can help the individual with the cost for that. Medications is one of our biggest partnerships with Community Health, so if they're on.
So the medical caseworker would just be to process some of the cases that they send over you, not partnering with them to bring and be a collaboration between the two?
Correct, and The funny thing is about the term medical caseworker, and Condrey and Associates had a number of questions about that, because you assume medical casework is just medical per se, looking at medical cases and medications, but in the big scheme of things within the county and the description for the job, it's medical caseworker, because they do more investigative work into medical cases, but they also help with the rent utility cases. And so it's not all focused on medical and medication. And when we talk about that for 2017, it's kind of figuring out where we're gonna see or might see an increase in whether it's economic, medical, or diversion. If we get somebody trained in the medical casework first, that's our primary business with the number of walk-ins coming in our office. And so it really creates that cross-training for that individual, so they can help with that piece, and maybe they help with diversion or whatever other direction we decide to go.
And how do you think, you have in here the Affordable Care Act, the impact of that in 2018? What do you see in the impact, and why is that impacting?
And I guess I can't tell you exactly why I put down 2018 in there, but what we know is with the Affordable Care Act, we, in just a few times, we've had to help out with the co-pays for the cost of the insurance, which is, it's been minimal right now, but when we see these big changes with the Affordable Care Act and how the plans change, and, you know, it was a couple of months ago where they talked about this big spike in what it's gonna cost an individual, or could cost an individual for their premiums, those are all unpredictable things. And it's not to say that in 2018, we may see this huge spike in medical claims.
Yep.
Where we have seen an increase is if we have an individual who's a county resident who might be at, and I'll use Sanford Health as an example out of Sioux Falls, then the county still holds responsibility if they are indeed a resident of our county. And so we've seen a more aggressive approach by some of the hospitals outside of our area to pursue payments for those as well. And so that, I get a little off track with that and the Affordable Care Act, but it's kind of one of those wait and see what happens with the Affordable Care Act, so.
Thank you, Barry.
You bet.
I got a question about medications, and I don't know, obviously, any of the details of how it actually happens, but if somebody comes to you or the jail and they need medication, where does it come from right now?
If we'll use the community health as an example. So if an individual comes over to our office with a prescription from community health, we have a pharmacy in town that we partner with that gives us pretty good rates on that. We can also use Regional Health's pharmacy in certain circumstances where they, doctors from Regional Health have done the prescriptions. It's called 340B, which is a reduced cost for the pharmaceuticals or the prescriptions. When it comes to other doctors, or if somebody would go to the Rapid City Medical Center, that's still one of those things where if they come to our office with the prescription, we do just emergency assistance.
You're a middleman, basically.
I'm sorry.
You're a middleman, basically.
Correct. Yep.
And for the jail as well, or has the jail got its own source?
The jail uses a machine with inside that's, the medications are stocked by Regional's pharmacy. And so it's a TELUS machine. The only way we get involved with that is if individuals are released from the jail and they come up to our office and they might be referred to community health, and then they come back over with a prescription. But beyond that, that inmate services budget, which was shifted over to the sheriff's department, that's where those costs come out of.
And the reason I'm asking this is community health, when they get online, are going to have their own pharmacy. So then you won't need to be the middleman anymore. Is that basically correct?
It could be, yes. It all depends on how that's set up, and whether it'll be how they'll do their medication assistance programs through community health, and if individuals, the amount of medications or the kinds of medications. And so often funding with medications through community health. They have so many vouchers they can offer, however the budget is set up with their voucher payments. And then once that money's gone, then they have to refer elsewhere to get the medications, which we end up a lot of times helping out with that.
Are you laying the groundwork now for cooperation once they get on speed, or is it a little too early?
We haven't had those discussions, but we've always had a good working relationship with community health. So I would imagine when they get up and running, we can start figuring out, or prior to that, how their big change in things, how that will impact us as well.
Okay. And real quickly, Mr. Chair, the rebound, I know you told Commissioner Hadcock and I about your system. Is 2 people is, and I know it's a subjective evaluation of how the program has succeeded in the last 9 years or it's been in existence, but what's your gut feel? Do you think it's worth our time?
I do. Really the goal across the United States is to try to come up with alternative forms, or I shouldn't say alternative forms, but reduce the rate of incarcerations, because it costs us a lot of money to incarcerate individuals. Rebound, we continue to demonstrate the success, and I say on the back end because a lot of the work we do with individuals is after they've been incarcerated. And so our goal with that is to try to reduce the rate of recidivism of the individuals re-entering our criminal justice system. And so we've had a huge impact there. Which MacArthur will help us do is try to figure out if there's something we can do on the front end. So if, for instance, it's nonviolent offenders, maybe there's a pre-diversion program. So I'll use Tyler as an example, who works with the inmates prior to release. He may be working with them if they're booked in and there's this new program in place where the individuals sent back out into the community until a hearing, and maybe Tyler provides the case management while they're out. And I speak on this not because there's anything formally in place with this, but these are some of the things we can look at through MacArthur. So that's where I think we are way ahead of the game, and even nationwide, when we had the opportunity in Washington, D.C. to speak with folks about what they're doing in their communities with diversion, we really have addressed the rate of incarcerations in our community. There's always things we can do better, but we're making an impact, and it really does provide that long-term, we work towards that long-term solution, so individuals are not entering our jail system as often.
With the diversion, you're actually proven through JDI philosophy and showing those programs have worked. I'm seeing kind of they're trying to repeat that with adults.
Sure.
In that same philosophy, or get an adult philosophy on it, which if you look at the numbers from before and today, George, it's a huge cost savings trying to get it on the front end as well, so.
It is. So.
And not that I'm advocating more people, but 2 is the right size workers over there, or?
We talk about expanding that in 2018. And that's another one of those really unpredictable pieces. If we're doing what we hope we can do, we reduce the rate of incarceration, so maybe there's not as much business for us. But when you look in the paper every single day, this business is exploding. And so really what our goal is when we talked about the medical caseworker is we get that individual trained in one major area of our department, and then we can use their skills to help out when it comes to case working the rebound side of things. And so we've kind of created those positions so that they're cross-trained so well that we can, if we see a spike in the number of rebound clients, we can address it. And that's why going into 2016, we didn't ask for any new clients at this time, so we could, any new employees, so we could focus on getting our employees all cross-trained so we can address wherever the spike in clienteles might be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Can I touch on the reserve just a little bit? So there's the Crisis Care Center Reserve, which was established, boy, it would have probably started coming up in 2011, 2012, after the crisis care was started. And that sits with a balance right now of $785,060. The Crisis Care Center, you know, we provided that presentation back in May, and as it stands right now, there's enough funding to support that until 2016. June of 2016 is kind of the rough estimate with that. I've been working with Ellen Solano for quite a few months, and we continue to look at what's gonna happen with the future of the Crisis Care Center. And we know that if that would close, worst case scenario, that can impact multiple systems, including law enforcement, regional health, county agencies such as the jail, detox, and our office. And so we're trying to figure out what the solutions might be to this and identifying other payer sources or other forms of contributing to keep the Crisis Care Center open. So
Barry, was it the Vision Fund that first started it, or who first started that funding of the crisis care? Or where did you get the first funding?
the funding came from multiple partners, including the city through the Vision 2012 funds. Regional Health provided some funding. Fukurovich Foundation provided some funding. And then the county started to, and this was the brainchild of our former director, Karen Romey, of putting some of the money aside that our office would turn back at the end of the year. And so the goal was to have $1 million reserve, which it was at $1 million. It's been, in the past couple of years, we hit that, or almost hit that. And so it was multiple partners coming together, and now, since 2011, it's been up and running for 4 years, and this will be the 5th year, and come June, it'll be time to, well, I shouldn't say come June, now is the time to start reevaluating, is this program doing what it needs to? Does there need to be adjustments to it? And how's it gonna remain sustainable? And we know the costs to run a program like that are very expensive, and so the reason I bring up these reserves is, as we look to try to fill in a gap of 3.2 million or 3.6 million within the county budgets, my suggestion on the reserve would be is if we could leave it sit there for 6 months while we see how things shake out with city, state grants, the regional health and other partners, to really figure out, is the Crisis Care Center serving the specific needs that it was built for, or are there alternatives to this? And so I wanted to bring it up now so that we have some time to really think about how it could be used, if that's indeed the direction you choose to go.
So Barry, are we still putting in, I can't remember, we didn't put any in last year?
No,
Yeah.
no. And where it's been accessed, why the amount has dropped is at the end of the year, typically right around November is when we come in with a memo that says, after the end of the year, the Crisis Care Center has not been able to access funds for, it's typically the indigent population who has no Medicaid, no insurance coverage, and they come through the Crisis Care Center, and there's no form of payment per se for that individual. So then this is the cost that get pulled out of that fund. So, but no, I don't believe that any money was put into it last year, or maybe even the year before.
But what we were talking about last year is taking some of this funding and dropping it down to 500,000, weren't we?
Correct.
Okay, and so just to be clear, you're asking to leave it at 785 until, okay.
Until we have, and I say 6 months because, like I said, June of 2016 is the estimated date that the Crisis Care Center would close without any funding coming from anywhere. And so we're really gonna have to reevaluate the programming and what the costs would be and the long-term solutions to it, so.
Well, let me ask you something. If were those funds originally, have we built up those funds through crisis care? Is all that 785,000, or is that through all entities? And is that become county money at that point?
That 785 is county money.
Okay, I just didn't know if that was they helped fund it and now we're gonna
No,
take
no.
the money and say it's ours now.
No.
Okay, I
That's,
appreciate that.
that's already, yeah, that's our.
Okay, been
our
used
money.
and now we're using county.
Yes,
funds.
that,
Thank-
well,
thank you very-
that fund is there if, however you choose to use it, I should say. So it's a lump. The 785,000 is a county's lump sum of money. So whether it's the crisis care center or something else.
We build a bridge.
Thank you very.
If we can wait 7 months to build the bridge, that'd be nice, but.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Barry.
If you're done, we're done.
Okay,
Thanks, Barry.
thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
You guys too. See you later.
Bye.
Oh, good.
Okay, we see that Eric's here, so we'll invite him up and turn it over to you, sir.
I have some handouts if I can hand them out.
You bet. Pass them up.
Thank you.
Two-page handout.
No, yeah, we don't allow handouts.
Mr.
you.
Richer, what's up with that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wouldn't bet on it.
Good afternoon. I thought, before we begin talking about why I put together the budget I've put together is sort of what my needs are for my department. And the first document that I gave you is sometime in 2013 or even early 2014, I had looked at how many attorneys I should really have for 2014, how many attorneys with actual numbers in 2013 that we should have had, and basing all those on what are American Bar Association standards of how many cases a lawyer should be handling and what kind of cases a lawyer should be handling. It's the same as like a doctor can only do so many surgeries in a day. A lawyer can handle only so many cases. So American Bar Association standards are for Class 1 misdemeanors, for example, and is one lawyer should handle no more than 400 of those types of cases in a year. For felony offenses, they should handle no more than 150 felony offenses in a year. Some of these asterisks, there's two of them because they're what I think is appropriate, because the Bar Association does give discretion from local, because every jurisdiction's got a little bit different aspects to their criminal codes. We have a lot of Class 2 misdemeanors, and they're just not as complex as a Class 1 misdemeanor. I think it's reasonable for a lawyer to be able to handle 500 of those in a year. But juveniles, appeals, A&Ns, felony probation violations is another very localized issue. You just don't have the kind of complex legal issues in a probation violation that you do on the front end when a new case is filed. You don't have usually videos to review, and the rights are limited, the procedures are limited. You don't have a right to a jury trial, for example. So my estimate is one lawyer can handle 400 of those in a year. Show causes, also a probation violation, but on a misdemeanor end. Again, you can handle many more than that. Mental commitments, they're quickly done and they're over. I think one lawyer can handle 1,000 of those in a year. And then your other category, these are sometimes the people's jeopardy is in place for like child support, for example, or they're a fugitive of justice and they're found here in our state. So maybe Nebraska wants them as an example. We hear about 300 cases a year. So what that means is the number of cases that we had handled or for actual numbers in 2014 was 5,753. One of the tasks that I really undertook when I took over is to start really breaking out our numbers so we know exactly how many files we're getting in the office, what kind of files those look like. And in 2014, we had 1,295 felony offenses, for example. Oh, I'm sorry, this is what my projections were. This first page is what my projections were. I projected we were gonna get 5,722. We ended up with 5,753, so I was actually kind of happy that I was that close. And what it ended up for actual, page 2 is what the actual numbers were for 2014. And by those actual numbers, we should have had 21 lawyers in my office if we were complying with ABA standards. And what I'm looking at now for 2015 is, thankfully, the numbers as they've been coming in these first few months don't appear as if we're going to get a lot more cases this year. It's going to be fairly close to what we ended up with in 2014. So that's the first time I have that good news to report. It doesn't look like we're going to have a spike. The types of cases are more, looks like we're going to have more felonies. This methamphetamine epidemic that's happening here in Pennington County is a real issue. And we're just seeing those cases keep coming in waves. So on page 3 is my projection of how many attorneys we should have in 2015. And you can see on that top line where it says felonies, last year we had 1,331. I'm projecting we're going to get about 1,380. And with felonies, the more complex, since they're more complex, you need more attorney time for them. So you jump from 8.6 lawyers, you need 9.2 attorneys in 2015, even though that number didn't move a whole lot. But fortunately, class 1 misdemeanors look like they might go down a bit. Unfortunately, class 2 misdemeanors are going to go up a little bit. And those, of course, these things can change as the year goes along. But nevertheless, that's how many lawyers we should have. I think as I wrote in my evaluation, one of the most frustrating parts about my job is we just don't have enough lawyers to go around. I think one of the things that I implemented when I became the director is we weren't even getting videos, let alone watching them in cases. And so I require now that all lawyers get a video. If there's a video of a stop or an arrest, that it's obtained and that it's reviewed. And if it's not obtained and not reviewed, there better be a darn good reason for it. Because sometimes you meet somebody at their very first hearing and they say, look, I did it, I want to get out of town. And so then they got to document, well, you understand that there's a video of this, you might have possible defenses. If I were able to review that, I might be able to talk to you about those and things like that. And they say, no, I did it, it's fine. And so as long as the attorney documents that conversation, says he understood that there was a video, but he wanted to get his case done today, so so he went ahead and waived his opportunity for me to obtain that and review that, so we could go ahead and plead guilty, get sentenced today, and move on down the road. So that time is what, to watch sometimes an hour or two video, and you're looking at attorneys that have, they have every attorney in my office has over 100 files open right now. I looked at just one of my misdemeanor attorneys in 2014 closed 612 cases. And of that, there's 20 A&Ns, which you shouldn't be handling anywhere near that many. Felony files, kind of an experienced attorney handling mostly lower level felonies, closed 377 files. Of that, there were, I think, 100 and, let's see if I make sure I remember what that number was. I don't think I brought that with me. It was about 180 felony files, what he closed, and the rest of them are appeals and A&Ns and misdemeanors and things of that nature. And the reason these things become important, and I kind of watch these lawsuits that are happening, is something bad happens where an attorney doesn't review something. Somebody goes to the penitentiary because they just didn't do their due diligence. That's when I'm liable, it's when you're liable, the county's liable. And I really want to avoid that, desperately want to avoid that. And not just because of money, it's the right thing to do. People, if the Constitution says you have the right to a lawyer, that should be a meaningful right to a lawyer. Should have a lawyer that's prepared, has time to meet with you and look at your case and look at the discovery and those sort of things. And that's why these guidelines help people like me and people like yourselves try to figure out what we need to do. And I really want to thank the commission, because since I've come on board, you've really tried to help with this process. I think under the 2013 numbers, we only needed 17 lawyers to run this office. And I have 16 right now. So we'd be pretty close. The problem is we gained over 1,000 cases in the last 2 years. We jumped that much. So we keep trying to catch up. And the problem with these numbers is we're experiencing the growing pains of trying to build a law office as fast as we've been building. I mean, we added 4 new attorney positions over the last 2 years. It's hard to do because to become good at this work, it takes time. You need mentors, you need them to start and learn and start in misdemeanors and move their way up and those sort of things. So I can overcome some of those issues, those growing pains, but that's hard. But to run a 21 or 22 person law firm out here this far from a law school, this kind of work, I don't want to do it. And if we're going to do that, it would need to be built over 5 or 6 years, and that's very hard. It's a hard thing to try to do. And so I'm really, I know in my narrative, I'm excited about like the safety and justice challenge, because frankly, I look at the cases that we get, we're handling, in 2014, we were assigned, let's see, 1,043 class 2 misdemeanors. 1,043. If the state isn't seeking jail time, they don't have the right to counsel. Court-appointed counsel. They can have an attorney, but they have to pay for it themselves. They wouldn't have a right to court-appointed counsel at taxpayer expense if the state isn't seeking jail time. We did 1,000 cases last year. And some of those are very appropriate because they might be have a felony probation violation, and the reason they have a felony probation violation because they get arrested on a petty theft that's a class 2 misdemeanor. And if they're found guilty of that, they're really going to be found guilty of the felony probation violation. So it makes sense for us to be involved. There's some cases where I think lots of reasonable people would say, yeah, that person probably deserves jail time, even though it's a class 2 misdemeanor. But I know there's a lot of these cases where the state isn't really seeking jail time. And so it's sort of this frustrating process of we seem to keep getting appointed in a lot of these cases where we really shouldn't be. Another thing happened, about 1.5 years ago, was the Rapid City Police Department changed their policies. They started enforcing in areas in which there were reports of aggravated assaults in a much more proactive way. They pull over people for very minor equipment offenses, and they try to search as much as they can. And the concept is if you get people on these low-level offenses, drug offenses, because if you search enough pockets, you're going to find marijuana. It's just if you do enough fishing, you're going to catch fish. Just the bottom line. But if you find marijuana, then that brings them into the system. And the concept is if you do that enough, you're going to lower the serious things of what everyone's really worried about, rape, murder, arson, those sort of things. Problem is, statistically, we know if somebody spends 3 days in jail, the odds of them then reoffending in some other way increases. So when you pick people up on these minor things, they spend 3 days in jail. Not only are you paying for them to sit in jail for 3 days at $71 a day or whatever the going rate is now, they're more likely to commit another crime. So I don't think that that's going to reduce violent crime. These statistics will shake out as we move forward. Certainly we have 5 homicides that we're representing right now in our office, and the state has 8 total. It's a record. So certainly for this most serious violent crime has not gone down. So I'm hoping at every point, and that starts at arrest, that starts at diversion, adult diversion programs. I mean, you know, if it's a 19-year-old kid, for example, gets arrested for possession of marijuana, if they plead guilty, they're no longer eligible for federally subsidized student aid. So now they don't go to college. So now they're on the welfare rolls rather than the tax rolls. And, you know, why? You know, what's the point of some of that stuff? And there's, you know, lots of good evidence that a diversion program where you keep them out of the criminal justice system and say, hey, you know what? You know, get on the straight and narrow. You don't get a criminal conviction of this. You don't have to put it on a job application the rest of your life. Actually improves public safety. That works better than if you put them into the criminal justice system, and we're not really very good at correcting behavior. We're just not.
Can I interrupt at this point, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The diversion, do you have any role in that at all, or is that?
Unfortunately, that, you know, only my voice. That would need to be run out of a state's attorney's office, really, because that's the elected official who he's going to have to be accountable to the taxpayers and the voters about who he's going to prosecute and who he's not. And I know Mr. Vargo is interested in doing a diversion program. They're complicated. But that's certainly a piece of it that I know he's interested in looking at to try to develop that kind of a program. And because if they're in a diversion program, they don't need a public defender because they're not going to get convicted as long as they do it.
At this point, you're on the sidelines, so.
I'm on the sidelines.
You're not you're in no way.
If I could run one, it'd already be going.
Well, but they don't ask for your side of, well, there's always sides, but they don't ask for your input at this point.
I would say that I think Mark and I have a good enough relationship that we can talk about these things. And so, and I'm certainly a part of this safety and justice challenge and part of that work group. And so this is really one of our top priorities of trying to develop a adult diversion program out of that. So I think people listen to me a little bit.
Well, good, and you and I talked a little bit, several months ago about the city's involvement in this. Have you made any gains there at all, or?
Yeah, we have. Although we don't have our memorandum of understanding that ultimately needs to be approved by you folks, the city, we're now billing the city if we represent somebody on the city ticket. And so the city will be reimbursing us for those. And the only reason we're ever going to get appointed on a city ticket is if they're seeking jail time, and those jail time requests have gone down now. So it did what we were hoped it would. So
Is that called incentive?
that's called an incentive.
Thank you.
So, but still, that's even those city tickets is still a small piece of this. It's a big piece of who's over in jail every weekend. Because those open containers and things, they sit over there for the weekend and then they plead guilty and they get out with their credit for 3 days served, but it's a cost.
So Eric, what's the difference between a felony case and a misdemeanor, meaning time that a lawyer has to work on that case?
That's a good
Because
question.
if you increased, by,
Yeah,
you have felonies 1,380, and then you have 2,704
yeah.
Class 1 and Class 2 misdemeanors, that's going to make a difference on time.
Absolutely. I always estimate that about just a basic felony case takes about 7 hours of attorney time to go through a basic felony case. As long as nothing like serious motions need to be filed, that's reading the discovery, consulting with the client, reviewing videos, going to various court hearings. The stakes are higher because they face penitentiary time. The expectations are higher that they're going to review those cases more closely. The ramifications on someone's future are greatly increased by having a felony conviction over a misdemeanor conviction. And usually the complexity is greater. More time is spent. Usually reviewing those, or during the arrest procedure, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at the same time, there are misdemeanors that become amazingly complicated and take lots and lots of time, but for averages, that should be only about, about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours on a misdemeanor before you can do that. Some of them you get done within an hour.
And on the law enforcement's behalf, and we talked about this because I had met with you when I came in, a lot of it's politics and people's wishes. If that response time isn't a certain amount, and so what happens is you increase your law enforcement because of the people's wishes, because they want that timing down, but when that taxpayer dollar comes up, they need to know those services cost money. So some of that, why law enforcement also grew, is because of politics and people's wishes.
Yeah.
And I knew that from the city when we went through our budgets on law enforcement, so.
No question, and I want the police to show up really fast at my home
Yeah.
too. And I don't want to build a moat to keep my family safe.
Right.
The police no longer wait for the phone to ring.
Right.
And then come. They are actively engaged in law enforcement.
Well, the
They're
bottom line, if you can't get any, your job is to be a police officer. So if you're bored, not like they're bored without saying that too mean, then, you find something to do, and that's part of your job. So then it ends up, and we talked about this, ends up in your office. So how you fix that, I think you've done some good progress on how that works and how to work with them. And I think the MacArthur Foundation and some of that will add to, or your grant that you're doing will add to some of that, and maybe working with them like you have, and just listening to people in your office. I know some of them from doing hair and stuff, they think you've done an amazing job of changes to help the constituents of Pennington County and Rapid City and everything for lawyer services and stuff. So I appreciate that too, Eric.
Oh, no, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And so that kind of goes to anybody else have any more questions about sort of what our needs are, and then I'll get to the budget end of it, what I'm asking for.
Mr. Chair, I do have one on A&Ns,
Absolutely.
pretty healthy jump there in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Is that going to jump more based on this last federal court ruling, or?
A&Ns are a real difficulty for us right now because of this jump. I mean, I'm supposed to, projecting in 2015, I should have 3 lawyers doing nothing but A&Ns, and to do an A&N right, one of the most, I used to do these all in Lawrence County because I think they're so important. You take people's liberty, then you take their kids, and it's a whole different ballgame. If you're gonna do these really well, what you do is you go to the meetings with the DSS workers, and you go and watch the visitations, and you meet with their counselors, and you spend 90% of your time not in the courtroom. You're spending it out in the field with your clients, helping them get through this process. A lot of times the legal end of it is there's not much. It's more social work than anything. And they're frustrating for a lawyer to handle because of that reason, because we're trained in the law. We know how to fight in a courtroom, but to go sit and watch a visitation isn't really in what we should be doing or good at. But it's how you do these well. And so with these abuse and neglect cases, when we see a rise like this, I should have 3 lawyers, and I really only have 1 doing them right now, and I've got a few other people that get 1 here and there and there, and A&N court is at the same time as misdemeanor court and 2 other felony courtrooms going on. So that person is running all around, doing the best she possibly can, and we just got a couple of new lawyers in, and so they're starting to take some of those too. But this is a real challenge for our office. I've got, I'll be meeting with the advisory board, which some of the commissioners here are involved with, and I've got some ideas about how we might be able to make it cost effective, make my office run a little bit better, with some of those. And really what that is limiting how many we do, but then also looking at if we can do some contracts with individual lawyers so the cost isn't so much for the county, but judges know who to give them to and things like that. And I think we might be able to have a win-win-win, but I'll visit with them about that, and because they're a real drain in resources for our office, and I can't say that despite our best efforts, if we're doing the best job that we can. But to your point on the issue of this federal lawsuit, if we're going to do meaningful 48-hour hearings, that's going to require a lawyer to review reports, call witnesses, and be ready to go within about 48 hours, and we might be able to get short extensions on that. But that means you'd have to drop everything and go and work on one case that's very immediate, very important. And all of my lawyers have 100 cases going right now that are all really important too, and so I'm not sure how we could do that. And that doesn't mean we're not going to do it. Because absolutely we will do whatever we can to do our best on those, but it's going to pose a real challenge for us.
And most of those are public defender cases, I presume.
Probably so. And I'll tell you, it's our experience too. We get appointed in a lot of cases, and when there's we got to be there in like 2 days. If they appoint outside counsel, they're not ready. We're ready, so we're a very efficient organization. So we get to court and get ready really, really fast. And
When I say public defender, I mean taxpayer-supported
absolutely.
defense.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yep.
So, Mr. Chair, Eric, you mentioned connecting with some other lawyers and contracting with them. How does that play in with Dakota Plains?
Well, it'd be a separate thing than Dakota Plains, because they're our conflict office. So if
You wouldn't,
two people are in a car, get arrested, one goes to us, one goes to them. And so I think they get 400 or 500 cases a year. This would be, and a lot of times they're in these ANNs as well. And I can tell you they're loaded up with those too. But what I was looking at, and what I sort of asked around a little bit for some lawyers, and if they could take maybe 20 or 30 ANN cases in a year at a set rate of maybe that's $20,000 or $30,000. So you're not saying it's $1,000 a case. That you can't set those sort of actual flat fees. Those are deemed inappropriate, because then a lawyer is disincentivized to work on the case. But but if you had a bundle of these cases, because some of these cases get dismissed quite quickly. The parent there was an emergency, everybody was intoxicated or whatever, the children need to be placed into care. Everybody is sober a week later and ready to take the kids back, and they're in treatment and things are going fine, and the kids go back home and the case is dismissed. So some of these get over very quickly, and some of them last years. So if there's sort of a balance there, at least when I floated that number to some members of the private bar that do some of these ANN work, they were at least interested in that. And I think it might be a way to limit some of the bigger cases for the county, so you're not paying $8,000 on one case and those sort of things. But we got to dig deeper. It's going to have to be a very complicated contract to draft, figure out who's going to be it. But that's one of the things I'd like to visit about, to see if we can relieve some pressure on my office. There's some of these cases we're going to want to keep, because if we got a serious felony, let's say it's a kidnapping and a rape charge or something, we're going to want that A&M, because we don't want the client making statements to DSS workers. And so we don't want some other lawyer that only does, just these A&N cases, handling that and making a mistake on the criminal end. So we're definitely going to want to keep some cases, but just the average run of the mill, we could use some help with not having some of those, because I'm supposed to have 3 lawyers doing them, and I don't have that.
And these aren't representative of the population, probably.
What was the question again?
These cases probably aren't representative of the population as a whole.
No, they're largely indigent, certainly, and not representative, no. Yeah.
I can tell you, I did A&Ns for the state's attorney's office, and you'd rather have all your teeth pulled out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They are miserable. I
Yeah,
mean, a few of them get over in a day or two.
Yep.
Some of them last 18 years.
Yeah.
From the time the kid's born to the time the kid turns to be an adult.
yeah,
That's like no win. No win, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So what I have requested this year is to add one additional attorney position. And also a little bit of funding for what I'll call a third-year law student, post-third-year law student internship while they study for the bar. And I'll kind of describe a little bit of why I'm asking for that, because we learn sort of the way a law firm usually grows is by one lawyer 1 year, one lawyer another year, one lawyer another year. So you build up, and you're recruiting 2-3 years ahead of time. So you identify people in law school who you think has the talent and interest, and you cultivate them over those, have them come in and intern, and if you like them, have them come in and intern again. We have 2 interns this year, which you all provided funding for, and they're fantastic. They're really saving our bacon this summer because we've been so short on lawyers. And very bright, very hardworking young law students that are just finished their 2nd year. And when law students graduate from their 3rd year, they have to study for the bar, which happens at the end of July. They take that. So it accounts for about 20 hours a week until they would take the bar. And then they could work 40 hours a week up until they get law results. I'd love to be able at the end of the summer say, hey, you two, you've got jobs, coming next year, but we're in government services here where I don't know for sure if I'm gonna have an opening a year from today, or actually 15 months from today. But that would give me a little bit of a, hey, I got a program for you because I'll probably have an opening, gives me some wiggle room, and so that's why I'm asking for that. And also, always helps us out. The summer months are generally a little bit busier, so helps the office as well. So I'm asking for that, and one more attorney. And once, we have offices for 18 lawyers, that's all we have in this building. And I really don't want to get there. I don't want to get there. I want to see what we can get done with MacArthur. We're still, when we get compression, we're still getting out of some cases. So, I know that that's an expensive end, but at the same time, we almost have to. So that's sort of what I'm looking for. I really don't want to run a 22-person law firm. I don't. It'd be really hard, and it'd be hard to get there in anything shorter than 5 years. So.
What, on your interpreters,
Oh, yeah.
do you want to talk about them?
I do, yeah, sure. Let me try to get to the right page here. It's not on here, but 2013 budget, when I first arrived here, I saw that there was this huge balance in that line item, and we're way over it. And I was at why, and we had represented someone who was deaf and charged with a very serious rape case, and that's what the interpreter cost. We sort of left that in, and then and I think, yeah, as you can see, our 2014 actuals were down to $650, so we don't really use interpreters generally. Sometimes somebody is hmong or we need to hire somebody. But that case, what happened is the state's attorney's office failed to give us very critical discovery, and there was actually an examination of the alleged victim in that case that was never provided to the defense, so it went up on appeal, and it was reversed. So we're gonna do that case again. So it's gonna cost a lot of money, and so we need to keep this interpreter, and I didn't know when that, so that's it. It's one case that's gonna take that much money, and it's gonna cost even more on the state side, because the interpreters, they need to have deaf interpreters in the trial. So we won that case.
And we lost.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Did you, your extra attorney, was that accounted for in the court's budget?
Was that counted for in the court's budget?
Now, the
Sorry.
court came to us and asked for court-appointed attorneys of $682,271. Did they coordinate your extra attorney with this number?
I don't think, I don't think so. I haven't talked to.
Good, so
court-
that'd be a reduction then if you hire another one.
Yeah, I didn't talk to them about
Okay.
what I was doing as far as, and I didn't hear what their exact budget amount was either, so.
Well, that's good news. If they haven't, then maybe we can reduce that sum.
Okay, very, very well, yeah,
Thank you.
I think, yeah, any more questions?
I think not.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, I might ask this is, and I don't mean this in any kind of negative way, but will the new mayor give any different kind of direction for the Rapid City folks?
You know, I don't know. I don't know.
And
what
no
the-
speculation as to which way that'll go.
Yeah, I don't, and I haven't had a chance to sit down with Mayor Allender yet to see where his position on some of these things are, so.
Doesn't start till July 6th.
That's right around the corner.
Yep.
It's been my experience that I don't have a whole lot of influence in what happens in the Rapid City Police Department. So despite my efforts, it's not gonna make much difference. We are truly the tail on the dog here,
Well, the
and
nice thing is he's worked in the police department, been the chief.
he knows it all, absolutely. And,
I think he'll do
you know,
a good
and
job.
I did have a chance to visit with Carl a little bit about the Safety and Justice Challenge. He's gonna be on the work group, and I think he's excited, and he thinks that, he did mention that he thought that Mayor Allender would be a really good partner in this as well. So, they have difficult jobs too, and I know sometimes they will have contact with what is later our client 5 or 6 times during the course of a day or early evening where they don't arrest, and then finally it reaches the point where they make an arrest. And a lot of times it's on very minor offenses, and they were screaming to have someplace else to take that person than the jail. And if we can find some real good strategies of where some of these folks can go, and handle some of that sort of chronic alcohol issues and homelessness issues, besides housing them in the very expensive hotel we have across the street.
Well, the nice thing, Eric, is he's been there, done that, and
Yep.
when he was as police chief and working with him, number one, he's a good listener, and he likes to get things done, and he's also a good team player, so I think it'll be a positive for Pennington County as well.
I think that'd be great. And, you know, like with just Barry was talking about, these things, if we can get all this stuff working in unison, I think we can make some really good change and hopefully save a lot of money. That would be great too.
Nice.
Make a safer place and more just and save money.
If we could just cut the growth,
Yeah,
if we could just stabilize the growth, it'd be a big plus.
Deacon by George.
Thanks again.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
No matter how we look at it, it's gonna keep going.
Dude. Oh. My niece niece just got here on Monday night. I was been. So she's having lots of fun. She's about 15, going on 16, so you already know.
I know.
I just checked when we're at this age.
Pull your hair out.
Hey, Mike.
So if you come in and you get as cold as we are, maybe you can fix the heat. It's cold.
He wasn't smiling. You guys are in a good mood. No?
I'm not, yeah, we're in a good mood.
I brought
think
some,
the-
Are
I
you
brought
in a
some
good mood?
reinforcements. I don't know if all of you know, Roger retired.
Yep.
Rita Bender is our new head accountant over buildings and grounds.
Nice.
And between the four of us and Roger, we worked very hard on this budget. Not a lot of growth in it. Most of it's utility driven. The big one is Black Hills Power is driving.
Mike, do you have the cumulative building fund in this, in your budget?
Do I have
Or is that separate? Where's your, in your budget, where's the cumulative building fund balance in this budget?
in accumulated buildings? Our portion of accumulated building is the capital projects, and
Okay.
that is in there.
Do you know the total what's in there, in that cumulative building fund in total? Or is it just the total is just the capital costs in it? You see what I'm saying?
That's in the auditors.
For this year, our capital projects is at 800,000.
Yeah, I'm asking him because he's on buildings and grounds, and he's also on the building committee.
And the sheet that, I think it's 4 deep in your packet, shows how I could spend another 800,000 easily in 16.
Right. I saw
And that money does come out of accumulated building, so, I mean,
Okay, and so when I checked, there was 7 million. Just a question. I'm on a committee that's wanting to look forward on a master plan for redoing the fairgrounds. If this commission decides that that is something worthy of putting money in, can they do that without going through the building committee? Or that's if, I mean, why I'm saying that is, I heard you guys might be doing a comprehensive plan, or heard from one of the fairgrounds board that there was gonna be a comprehensive plan in Pennington County and maybe the fairgrounds, but I'm already working, and you knew that, and Lindell knew that I've been working over 7 months on a committee to bring some maybe sustainability to the fairgrounds, make it more sustainable for city and rural folks. And at this point, I just want to know options and
well, as far as, I mean,
how that procedure goes.
in our operations budget, if you look about a third of the way down, you see professional services and professional miscellaneous fees. I do have some money in there, not a lot, for basically architectural and engineering fees, drafting services, those types of things. If a master plan is decided by the commission that they would like me to direct some of either 15 or 16 money out of my capital projects, yeah, it could definitely be spent that way.
But you guys haven't talked about doing a comprehensive plan and including the fairgrounds at this point. You haven't talked about that. You just talked about the bonding and stuff when I talked to you about it the other day.
At our last building committee where Nancy and George were both there, what was discussed and how it came about was basically Michael and I invited Julie Pearson to come down and tell the committee where we're at
Bonding.
money-wise
Yep.
for projects right now.
Okay.
And what we were kind of looking at requesting for a budget for 16. And as a discussion went around, I mentioned that my Honeywell performance contract is finished in 16, so that money could be also
Put towards it.
utilized in future projects or capital
Talked about
projects or whatever.
projects, but
Then
it
it-
wasn't discussed about a comprehensive plan. There was just about projects. It wasn't about
No,
any
that's
kind of.
not true.
Then, as I mentioned that, Julie brought up, well, with that kind of money and what you're already taking for capital or accumulated building, you guys have got a good funding source to pay a bond back. And if you have more projects right now than you have money to go out for a bond and get some of these projects done, would alleviate a lot of that real quick. So the conversation started then. And to refresh a master plan, so we have some documentation to take to the bonding companies if we go that far, to make a list. Michael and I were kind of directed by the building committee to refresh that RFP to items that are still on our need list.
Right.
And then bring it back to the building committee. And Ron Jeffries was at the meeting to discuss his two concerns he has right now is lighting in the event center.
Right.
And a humidity situation.
I appreciate that. Why I'm saying that, not to put you on the spot, Mr.
But-
Peterson, but I've been working with a group of people, the school mines, the city,
What you
some of the a fair representative for their board, Ron Jeffries, and at this point, I just needed to know if that was something feasible, that we could come with a master plan, ask for some of that money, or just come to this commission at this point and ask for some of that money to be used for that master plan, because at this stage, I think we're kind of to that point. So to have a comprehensive plan, adding the fairgrounds at this point, I think would be a moot point. If they wanted to do a comprehensive plan, I think the fairgrounds, since we've already got a committee, we set forth a committee based on Ron Jeffries and Lindell Peterson's direction. That's how come I've been working on this. So I would hope this board at that point would take that in consideration, that we wouldn't have to add that. And I will be at your building committees now. Been invited, and sounds like I need to be there. Just to find out all the details, but I'll probably be coming, if we need be, to the cumulative building fund and see how I work that, or how I can get help from you. So thank you for all your input yesterday about that. Your help was well needed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Back to this, I mean, we put together a sheet, kind of what these different budget line items go towards. I don't know if there's any questions there. Really, where the growth in my budget is right now is utilities, and with the COLA and the merit that was asked to be put in there. If there's any budget cuts, I mean, I gotta pay the utilities, and without cutting people, the only other thing there is paint, carpet. You know,
We thought maybe you were trying to
Letting the
take it out of the
buildings-
heat bill.
letting the buildings run down, you know what I mean?
You know what, Mike, watching the work you and the Builds in the Ground group do, I don't know if Pennington County constituents know, but I believe you have saved millions of dollars in your time being here. From what I've seen you MacGyver, or Guyver, as they say, things up. And it's been amazing to go around and do that tour and see the things that Buildings and Grounds does. So I think if we have been saving some money, it has been a lot through you and that building committee, or your Building and Grounds people, because they're amazing from what I've seen. And I do have 5 buildings, and that maintenance and that upkeep, my husband does, and it's amazing the things you have done to save money.
Thank you. I do have a tremendous staff.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike? We all roughed you up, didn't we?
So,
Can you guys take the rest of the day off now?
No?
That's why we're rushing through these stuff.
Mr. Chair. Actually, because Julie is here, I do have a question, because I've noticed on a couple of different budgets, like on the operations budget for Buildings and Grounds, the performance contract, it's in in Mike's, but then there's also something in auditors, and I'm trying to understand that connection
On what?
on your performance contract. This would be underneath your operations budget, and there was another one that I asked about earlier, same kind of thing, where it was in both places, and I'm trying to understand why it's in that, why it's that way. Probably a dumb question, I just don't remember why it's that way.
So we don't forget it.
All right.
I just wanted to double check that I didn't have it input twice.
Okay,
It's under lease purchases, which on your budget summary has got the Honeywell and radio towers in it.
that's the other one I
But I have a lease
collected.
purchase sheet that shows both of those.
And
Yeah.
that's that performance contract.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
ending in 16.
But for Mike's budget, I only have the 4.2 million in his buildings and grounds. That would have been nice, because that would have been another 800 and some thousand we could have added. But
And-
I do it so that
yeah.
we make sure that,
473.
that it's in there.
Okay, because
But
it
we only have it
was,
in
the
the budget
radio tower
summary
was the
once,
other one,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It felt like it was double, and I just wanted to make sure we weren't, so, okay, thanks.
It is in there twice, theirs and 911's if you talk to 911.
Correct.
And most
Yeah.
budgets, they do that just because it's so
Well,
you
they
can
need
see
to
it.
justify
Yep.
it, I just need to
Yep.
make sure for debt purposes it's in there.
I understood that, I just needed to make sure you verified it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I think maybe what Deb started to ask about was the amount of money that we're talking about putting into the building and grounds. We were talking about maxing out our taxing ability and so on, and it might be good for everybody to hear some of that, or,
He has his 800,000, that used to be 300,000, we increased
Right.
it last year, which is under, on the budget summary, I think it's buildings and grounds CIP dollars. That's completely separate from the
Okay.
master plan budget that I'll talk about, which is trying to
okay, you're going to bring that separate?
separate.
Okay,
Though they sound like the same dollar amounts, they're roughly close. But his is an expansion of roof repairs money and to start building up a reserve if,
I mean, in the beginning, they come from the same.
yes, they're in the same fund. What I'm talking about is extra money that's being levied to maximize that levy for future planning, and it's in
And
a different.
we're all
yes.
wondering, I've heard some comments, and I just want to make sure we cover
They're two
it.
separate. His is for current building needs, and the money I put in there
It's for future use.
is for bonding or future use.
Thank you.
And that I increased up to the maximum of 1.5 million,
And
extra over his 800,
Right.
And that money, that 800,000, what
his.
I don't get
I get
spent of
it.
it.
I
or-
just want to make sure everybody's
It
got
goes
it.
back to the
Yeah.
accumulated building.
Right.
It can't go back to the general fund.
No.
Yeah,
Julie,
I
when you were
get it.
talking about a cumulative building fund and the 7 million earlier, to me, where was that coming from? That was from the levy
There's a
or?
balance in accumulated building fund.
Right,
His CIP budget of 800,000 comes out of the accumulated building levy. And then there's an additional amount being levied. Last year, I think we increased that to 700,000 over and above our bond payments to start building up some reserve or to help pay for some more of the master plan, because at that point in time, the building committee realized we weren't going to be able to complete that second phase.
and maybe I could get with you and figure out what fund in with Mike, that if we needed money for that master plan, which one that would be the most appropriate, so I
They're
appreciate
in the
that.
same fund.
Okay, but
So-
you
so
know
the-
how it works and
Yeah.
how to do that process.
So I would his is for current projects, and we can just budget $100,000 in accumulated building for whatever type of master plan or additional master plan you want. If it's just for the fairgrounds, they have their own fund that we can attribute it to that and levy for it at that. either one, whether it's fair fund or accumulated building,
Yes,
they're the consolidated levy, it just comes out of that levy, and we can levy less in general fund.
I appreciate
So then
that.
it's a little bit more attributed to the right, but accumulated building does have balance money in it that is not being specifically allocated.
right. I appreciate that, because I was told by people to come here during budget time when this process, to bring this forward so this board would know what's going on. And I did talk to the other board members about some of this, so I appreciate that. And what future this could mean for the fair and that master plan with working together with the county, the city, and the school. So, thank you. Thank you for your information.
Yeah, we just need to put it in and either subtract it from that extra or levy more.
Yes, ma'am.
Just depends.
We did that in the city, but I just wanted to know the process. Thank you.
But it has nothing to do with his 800,000.
Okay.
And the reason I do it is to keep it separate from that, and once it's decided what we're gonna do with it,
Then we transfer
we'll
it.
assign it to a department head.
Thank you, Ms.
Yep.
Julie.
Do you have any questions for us, Mike?
Oh. My turn?
Now we know about that budget.
I really don't. I think you guys are doing a good job.
Thank you. You're doing a good job. Wonderful job, you folks.
Mike Cool, you don't have anything to say?
The saying is, do not grasp defeat out of the jaws of victory. Sometimes you're better off to sit there.
Very wise. Have you got the 2.5 million or whatever figured out where it's coming from yet?
Well, yeah, we figured out where 800,000's coming.
Where we get funds for the future. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for visiting with me yesterday. That was nice.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Are you done, Julie, or do you want to come back up?
See you in my time. Good morning.
Or afternoon.
Afternoon, yeah. Sorry.
We don't want to start the
I
morning
left the
over.
room.
I'm Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor.
I think she's saying that to you,
Martha
Linda.
Smith, as I've been called.
I thought it was Martha Smith.
Martha Smith, yeah.
That's a alias.
Known by a lot of them, actually. I'm not sure exactly what order yours are in, but I think we start out with the FTE report, is that correct? What I'm doing there is you realize, when I talk FTEs, I have the two budgets. I've combined, leaned back into the auditor's budget, so I've gone down from 3 to 2. When we're going into a larger, presidential years are huge in comparison even to a gubernatorial, and then when you're electing a new president, it's even worse. So what I'm proposing to do, and I will tell you, I haven't quite settled on this, and right now we have 2 part-time people that come in on our need schedule that are non-benefited, and it's getting about to the point that I have them budgeted for over 1 full-time FTE. And some of our duties, though it may seem like they're getting less, they're actually getting more in our office. And we're about to the breaking point of where we need that steady person in. And of course, I also have to increase by about 2,000 hours additional help in elections for the 4 to 6 weeks that we early vote for both the presidential, or for the primary and the general. So I've tried to explain that if I go forward with transferring from the 2 part-time, I would, of course, be able to reduce those hours and increase by 1 FTE. But I just want to kind of tell you, I'm not going to do that unless I have to, even if it's budgeted. It depends upon what level of part-time help we can get for elections. It's when we take those two part-timers that we use in our accounting functions to back us up and to do the conversions of 1 year to the next and all of that. So, and of course, when you go from non-benefited to benefited and you have to estimate you're gonna have a full family budget, plus you add the increase of the 2,000 plus hours that we need for non-benefited, it's kind of a wash, other than it's gonna cost about $64,000. So, what I'm saying is that we might be able to prolong that a year, and that's what I'm going to try to do when I found out we were 2.6 million, minus the 800,000, which I was gonna give up first for the, as we get closer, I wasn't sure how close we were gonna get to that. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and I haven't committed to that fully. It just, we're looking for part-time people in elections for right now. So that's kind of where that is. Everything else is, I'll start out with auditor's budget. That's pretty much a status quo budget, other than that's where the additional FTE and only one of the part-time salaries were in there. If you would take that out, then and I started a request for a financial package reserve. If you recall, we just changed in 2013. It's a huge expense. It was over $300,000 for this year, and when I filled out that long-term thing, I thought, well, you know, that should be part of the discussion. If we look at changing that every 10 years, then you'd start to need to put some away.
Julie, can I ask you a question? Do you know anything about why the group insurance fluctuation between departments would be so great?
It depends upon what coverage they have and the number of employees they're covering. Is that what you mean? The cost to the county for a single coverage versus single plus one versus single plus two or more is
Why it
different.
fluctuates per department, like one will
Yes.
have a huge insurance, benefit.
What happened was equalization, went from 218 to 284.
Yeah, if they lost people and people came on that needed insurance,
I don't think they lost anybody, I don't know, maybe they did.
well, you can,
Boy, that seems like a lot.
yeah. If you change from single to full family coverage,
Lot.
that's a lot of change, budget-wise as well as to the employee. And you have no control over it. And now that I'm not exactly sure how Obamacare works, but our plan is no longer what I consider a closed plan. You can come on and off more frequently. Under the old rules, you had to request to come back on, and you had to wait for 12 months. That's no longer the case. And I don't know if Shannon's people are younger, so therefore they're having children, and when you go from a single to a plus one or a plus two or more, even though the county only matches 50% of that coverage, it is a big one. And if you're expecting retirements, now I know he's had two retirements, and if they weren't on insurance at all, and you're expecting to do some replacements, you're gonna have to budget at a full family.
There you go, just to make sure you're covered. Yep.
And your usage can fluctuate from, not maybe, probably month to month. I don't know when ours opens up, I think in December. So you can be stuck not having a full family premium in there, and I don't know if that's what it was or not. But if he had two retired, they're kicked off, and he's got two younger ones come in with full family or two or more. And he probably doesn't have it budgeted this year, and he's gonna be stuck absorbing it.
What drew our attention to it is that 2014, it was 152,000 plus. 2015 is 218,000 plus. 2016 is 284,000 plus, 66,000 jump in 1 year.
Did he have, I can't remember, didn't he add some staff 2 years ago?
He has 22 FTEs from 19.
This year?
He went from 19 in 2014 to 22 this year.
Well, that can add $36,000 right there. If you're talking 3 employees, and you have to assume for budgeting purposes that they're gonna come in at full family, that's about $12,000 a year
They're younger.
Per family?
for a family coverage.
That's not only take care of half of it, though.
Pardon me?
I don't know.
But just
Well,
as,
that's 36,000, and he added 66,000. I mean, that's
but just as bad as Health and Human,
misinterpreted something.
Health
It
and Human
could be.
Services went from 72,000 in 14 to 164,000 this year.
Who's? Mine?
Health and Human Services, they more than doubled from 2014 to. So they're not the only ones.
Yeah, from 2013 to 14 is when we had the large increase.
And yours went down 9,000.
Yeah.
That's because I had people drop their kids, they graduated
She just
from
hires old
college.
maids. Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
No, it's when they drop their kids.
Retain their people.
And that includes an assumption, if I hire a new person, I got $12,000 in there for
Based on turnover, too.
a full family in case I hire somebody.
He does.
But that decision I will make prior to the
They should do either.
fall, and if you haven't come up with your 2.6, I probably won't budget for that. And I don't know if, and I can't tell you if we'll want to replace financials in 10 years. We had the other one for like 12 or 15, and it just kind of depends, and I don't know if we want to start building that up so quickly, when we don't know what accounting changes. If they make another GASB 34 change, we'll have to change in 3 years, or it could be this one's just fine. And, you know, when you change, it's not gonna be me anyway, so I'm not ever changing again.
Julie,
I'm gonna be
Julie,
gone.
You don't have any capital costs coming up, or the FTE, you're deciding if you're gonna leave them 2 part-time?
Well, the capital cost that we have to decide on is if you want me to start reserving for a financial package. I figure it was over 300,000. This time in 10 years, it's probably gonna be close to $500,000.
Could you explain it?
That's just the cost of buying the software to run, to make our payments and our payroll, to track our cash receipt, not Janet's cash receipts, but we run them through our software package, not tax receipts, but all other receipts.
And how much is that usually,
That was
on
about,
average?
we just purchased one in 2013, and it was over 300,000.
Thank you.
So if we want to prolong and increase it next year, that's fine. In Auditor, I don't have any capital costs. Other than that, if we want to start reserving that, it's just part of the discussion to see, you know, maybe software costs will go down. I don't know. They're expensive when you have to start budgeting for them as prepackaged, but that's the way we have gone.
That's a lot of money.
But other than that, everything's pretty much the same on auditors. And who do you have next?
Julie, before you leave there, your professional services, 73,000 is, what does that consist of?
The professional services would be, that about 60-some thousand, actually almost all of that is the fee that we have to pay to CCB for collecting of liens.
Okay, okay.
We tried to net the revenue, and DLA didn't like that. So now we show the full revenue for the liens they collect, and then I have to pay them a bill, which is 35 or 40%. And they were, 65, probably about 70,000 of that is for CCB.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So it's supported by revenue, kinda. I think it overextends everything, but they don't care what I think most of the time. The elections budget. As you notice on that, I show a comparison like you like to last year's, which is 2015, which is an off-election year for us, which we simply run, normally we simply run one city election. This year, we are running 3. So I more try to make comparisons to an actual even year, which 2014 doesn't even compare because it is a gubernatorial year. Also, if you'll notice in that, I'm continuing the long-term equipment reserves. And we started that last year because we weren't sure if 2 scanners would do the job for us, and we've decided after last November and after running a fairly large turnout for a city election that we will purchase that 3rd scanner for next year. And along with that, they have come out with a piece of equipment that will replace our auto marks, which we're required to have at each polling location. I don't know if any of you have availed yourself to the infamous auto mark that maybe, if we're lucky, works 25% of the time, and we have 55 of those.
Can you tell me what an auto mark is?
It's a voting machine that marks a ballot that can be used by people with disabilities.
Okay.
Does anybody use them?
Anybody can use it, but it's...
Does anybody use them?
But it helps.
No.
I didn't
And
think-
that, we are required to have them. We rarely work, they rarely work. We are lucky that we've not had a lawsuit because we don't have we don't have duplicates to take out to a polling place to replace one that doesn't work or is not functioning. And if we're lucky, the one we take out maybe or maybe not functions. And so they haven't really improved them, plus they weigh about 70-some pounds. We've had to buy a trailer, and we have to have somebody deliver them to the polling places and pick them up, and so anyway, they have come out, and the state has approved a new one, but we'd need about 55 of them, and they're about right now they're $3,500 a piece.
And are they made the same way with the same weight, or is it a new?
No,
improved
they're
version?
smaller, they weigh less, of course, they're like a pull suitcase carry-on versus the 70-some pounds that they're now.
You think with the computer technology we have, they would have came out with something a lot easier for voting by now? For people with
Well, it has to
disabilities?
still vote all your disabilities, so it has to have reverse text, it has to be big, little text, it has to be able to be used as a sip and puff, it has to have hearing attached to it, it has to have Braille on it, even though 99% of the people with visual handicaps anymore don't use Braille, it still has to be Braille. It's a mess, but, so we're gonna have to buy those. We do have some HAVA funds available, and we're hoping that, actually Minnehaha County is gonna use one in early voting, and so before we change, we're waiting to see how it works there before we buy one. And we would never do a massive buy like we did on the auto marks, because they're just, and we have to have them on any federal election, which, thank God, the city doesn't want to use them, because then we'd just have more. And then you have to ship them off to Omaha to have them fixed.
The city
Do you have
doesn't use
any
them?
indication how many people use them during any
Oh,
given
yes,
election?
we have to report that. I'd say less than a handful at each precinct, if that. Sometimes they're not even used. They were used one election when we told the poll workers they had to use them.
But if you
Don't have to.
had a total number, what would
At
you,
any election, I'd say less than a dozen.
Right.
so if you had one outfit and you picked a Democrat and a Republican and whatever, a couple old guys that didn't have anything else to do, and trained them to use the machine, and they drove around to each person during the early voting and testified that they had a chance to vote, instead of buying $300,000 worth of equipment, what would that do?
You couldn't do it.
Why?
Because a person with a disability has as much right as anyone else to be able to go to their home precinct and vote on election day, just like anybody else. I'm not saying I agree with it, and
Well-
everybody hates the auto marks, but no, you have to have it in every polling location.
If they said, this is the way I want to do it,
They can do it that way, they can do it any way they want, but we have to have a piece of equipment available for those people with handicaps to choose to vote on if they so desire on election day.
Why is it only federal?
Because the feds cannot make regulations for state elections and city. But are the elections that the county's responsible for always have a federal candidate on it? These elections we're having this year are all city, and we don't use the auto marks.
Well, that's
They're
funny
expensive.
when the guy in charge there, it seems like something he would have pushed, but it's all good.
He can't tell the states what to do.
Okay. You can do,
He can tell us what to do on federal elections. And we could choose to have our elections a different date than we have a federal election, but that just costs you twice as much.
yep.
So, no, it's not perfect.
Have it in a foreign language too, or do we?
I don't yet.
It's coming.
I was gonna say,
There are, the reservation counties have to have it in
Yeah.
Lakota. Is that the official? Which frankly, even all the Indians don't speak it. The language that they use has been determined by somebody higher up than any of us. And we don't have enough of our population yet. If we get to that point, whether they're reservation counties or whether we're a reservation county, as they're called, we'll have to do them in Lakota.
that's
I
what
was
that's
thinking more,
based on.
more really of our neighbor down south. But got anything to say about the federal government, George?
Oh,
That's a first, George. Come on, George. Say
well,
something.
what I wanted to ask is is there a feature on that apparatus for low information voters?
No, we wish. And they're not in electronic storage, they are just a ballot marker. So they comply with federal and, well, they comply with state law.
It gets worse every year.
It does. So that's what that 75,000 is for. And when we make the determination how many we're going to buy and when we need to use our HAVA funds, then we'll come in 2016 with a request for a budget supplement from those monies, and we'll use those monies up first. Any questions? What's next?
Emergency disaster.
Well, emergency disaster is a fund that is for snow removal and emergency disasters. In the past, we have levied it up to a level of 300,000 and then determined that that was, each board makes that decision, decided that the cash available, about 300,000, was sufficient. We've used it in the last 4 or 5 years. We used some of the money when the flu epidemic came through. We have used money for mountain pine beetle over a couple of years. And what was showing in your 2015 was just simply amount that we levied to get that fund up to a $300,000 balance. We have no expectations of spending that money. And then we will have the 300,000 that if we have another emergency, or it even can be used if there's a huge snow. We could have used it in the October 4th blizzard, was it October 4th, a couple years ago, and depleted that fund lower than we did because we were gonna get some of that money back, but Heine at the time absorbed all those costs because he budgets for some of that. So it is available, and I'm not recommending any increase in that cash balance. It's under county consolidated, so it does help what we can levy in general fund.
So
for
that
that reserve.
that really is a rainy day fund and or snowy day fund.
It's a snowy day fund.
Okay.
We refuse to call it snow removal because then highway departments want all the money. And in Pennington, we've pretty much determined it's for the board to decide under the qualifications of an emergency, which means it's something that you can't foresee, which all those three events met. The pandemic, flu epidemic, and the mountain pine beetle, the first year we started treating it. And then if we would have needed it, we could have gotten some money for the use of the October blizzard.
It really is a lockbox. It really is locked up. You can't, how does it get triggered? To this
This board has to
trigger
declare
it?
an emergency.
We're in control.
Okay, and
Yeah.
the $300,000 figure, that was just, it was some way to arrive at that, or?
Yeah, we were increasing it about $10,000 or $30,000 for a number of years until it built up, and we've rarely touched it since we don't use it to levy for snow removal. We hardly touched it, so the board at the time thought 300 was plenty, and
It's just an arbitrary number that somebody
Yeah.
picked, and we probably should adjust it for inflation every year or so,
you
maybe.
certainly can.
Well, I sure didn't know that we
Yep.
had a snowy day fun or whatever.
Well, or it could be a tornado
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
flooding.
Something that
Yeah.
we got to reimburse for different things in that October blizzard, and so we pretty much said, if you can absorb it, do it, because the things that we want to keep that money for, we don't know, then there'll be like a 72 flood or something. What do you got next?
Domestic.
Domestic abuse fund is, that money comes in from marriage licenses, filings for divorce, and we are required to put it in and give it to a domestic violence shelter. And since that has started, it's right around the $45,000 mark every year, so we have revenues to spend, or we collect the revenues, and then we, once a quarter, send it out to the
Working against violence.
Wavy or something
the
like that?
Wavy, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only shelter in town, and even if you don't have a shelter within your county boundaries, you have to find one to give it to. We're just lucky enough, I shouldn't say lucky enough, we have one. So and for some reason, we have to budget for it. Put it in a fund.
Gave
and-
it to Wavy, and then I thought I saw in subsidies, we gave money to Wavy just out of general fund? last
There
year,
is
or no?
some Wavy money coming for some reason, and I don't know why or what it's for, that's in the state's attorney's budget. But I don't know what they use it for, and I don't know, I don't know anything about it.
Can they use it?
And the only
for-
reason I remember, and I think it's about $50,000, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. Can we use some of this to
No.
offset some of their budget? No, it's not legal.
No, but well, in a way you can. You can say, no, we're not gonna give you that money, state's attorney. But
Right.
they maybe get it from something else. too.
But I don't know what they use it for. And just last year, we put it in their when we went to Springbrook, we put it in because I put it in public defenders and we couldn't balance. That's why I'm thinking it's close to 50, but I don't know what it's for. It's for something.
Okay, I
And
can
it's not
ask.
this money.
Thank you.
What's next?
Healthcare.
Okay, I get stuck putting this budget together I don't put it together, presenting it just to make sure it gets in there. Because we're self-funded, we have to budget all the expenses for that, including claims that are paid, and then, of course, receipts come in, and it's not supported anything by directly levying for this fund. It gets its money from the county matching and the employee deductions from their check. And because we've been changing over the last couple years, we can now sort out health premiums, life premiums, and the dental. The contract fees, those are, if you see that huge increase since we've lost first administrators, we had a guaranteed rate from whoever does it, and they increased their rate dramatically.
They pulled it's Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they pulled the old, get insurance with us, because we're cheap for
No,
1
they
year.
told
And
us.
now it's not cheap anymore.
No, they told us it would happen. Yeah, they said it up front.
But it's the
It's
fee
huge.
we pay them to administer our plan. It's not insurance-related in that aspect.
And some of it has to do with Obamacare. They told us that they were going to increase it, but then they also told us that as Obamacare rolls out, these are the fees that we are required to pass to you. So it's a combination,
They say that all the time.
a lot of
But
money.
it's a fee for what they do for us versus, and we're not,
Just a reason to increase it.
none of us
Just a reason
are
to.
versed enough in it to do it.
I see.
I mean, there's
I-
so many requirements, it's kind of like why we don't collect our own liens, is there's a lot of
Yeah.
requirements to it and paperwork, and we're just not trained to do it. Maybe we could be at 215,000, but then you'd have to add employees and all of that. What's next?
The master plan dollars. that
Okay,
bond.
this one, I've already deducted the 800,000. I just did it for you. If that's what you want to do. I even punched holes for you.
Thank you.
If you want to put this, labeled it draft 2, so you're all ready.
Thank you.
And we still have left the 709,000 that we started levying last year to, until the building committee decides how to either accumulate or have it for a bond payment in the future. Now, you don't have to do that, but, you know, if the building committee and the board decides that they're going to do something, they're going to have an estimate dollar amount, and it would be a better forecast of what you're going to do, and I don't know if they'll have that by even September of this year to go to the next phase. They have bond dollars left, about 2-point-some million in the bond dollars from the original 37 million, and they have a $6 or $8 million cash balance in accumulated building that they can use toward their next projects. And once they kind of get those things locked in, then we can see what we want to do with that budget. As of now, that amount is just going into the cash balance. But it is sufficient if you would want to have the building committee put in some second phase of the master plan and do some bonding. Rates are very, very good right now. Just something in the paper today about the feds raising rates. So it's advantageous to do that rather than trying to reserve the money until you have enough. But I don't know what all the plans are of the building committee. So I did take that out. I can certainly put it back in if you end up with all of your cuts and you say, oh, we have another 800,000 we can levy for. We can certainly put it in.
And that levy is submerged in the general fund levy.
It's submerged in county consolidated, which is fair, county general, and accumulated building. And that's where our maximum levy,
Could go.
maximum tax dollar levy is calculated on, and we can move it however we want.
Nice.
Between those three funds only.
So when I see general fund on the tax bill, there's more than general fund on,
Yes, the fair shows separately.
but the general fund one has this embedded in it.
County consolidated, I don't know what it's called on the tax notice, but yes, it would have this one in it,
I think it just says county, as I remember, just county.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
And I can't tell you if the fair is just stated on there, or if,
There's fairgrounds, there's a line item.
I know it's stated on there, but I don't know if it's just a statement or if it's actually taken out of the one county. I haven't looked at those. We kind of have to finagle that every year to show what we want it to show according to statute.
I'm pretty sure we've got 9 line items, and fairgrounds, I'm almost sure is
No,
one
I
of
know fair is. I just don't know if it's still included in,
Oh, the building part,
in
you
the
mean?
county, in
Oh,
the
okay.
county part.
Okay.
Because when you look at tax increment districts, we started showing those on there. And I think it's just a calculation of what it is, but it's already included in the rest of your county funds because of the way the state tells us we have to show it. We have to make changes to those things every year. So what do you got next?
Lease purchase.
Okay, these are just for your information and to make sure they get in the budget, and we have verified both that the general fund lease, which you see the Honeywell lease is the one that's under buildings and grounds, and that expires in 2016, so it is included in the 2016 budget. I don't know what, this is the second one that we've had. I don't know what buildings and grounds is going to do with that in the future. The next is the tower lease, which is different than the equipment lease. And these are the equipment lease is the one we got in trouble over. We knew about the tower lease, and then the equipment lease is the one that they did, and they do it within their budget because of the money they collect and how they set up the payments. And we pay very little into the sheriff's office has a portion of payment of part of those.
So define get in trouble and difference, meaning.
Well,
how
under the
process.
old agreement that the dispatch was working under, they had the authority to go into debt. They went into debt with the equipment lease without our knowledge. And because our being mostly ours, because I believe the board knew they were going out and they were told to go out and buy this equipment, because it was for the new building, that we didn't report it to our bonding people. And they sent us a nastygram. And on top of that, because our office didn't know about it, we didn't put it on our financials, so then we got a nastygram in our audit. But they have rewritten their agreement, and the board's taken authority away from any committee or any other, and nobody can go into debt unless it goes through the commission. But they had the authority under their it was a city-county agreement, so they worked well within their realm of what they thought they could do, and the board just says no, because we can't control it that way. So, that's that one, and it is in the correct places
Okay.
in those budgets.
And the odds are authority was probably granted in that joint powers agreement, probably, huh?
Yes, and that thing is, that's what it's called, the Joint Powers Agreement to run the dispatch, and I don't know who all's on that. And so they were well within their cited rights, but they were reworking the agreement anyway, and we've just signed it, I think, since in 2015.
Right.
And I double-checked with both Kevin and Leanne, and that Parsh they wrote some type of innocuous statement in there that says, according to policy or something, so we don't have to rewrite it if the county commission changes their mind. So, what's next? The bonds?
Revenue
Estimates.
Revenue estimates, I estimate all the revenues for general government, which you'll see in the second column, that's by a 0-100, plus all of those for election, courts, auditor, with the 130s, the 140s, and the 141s. I also estimate the revenues for domestic abuse, the accumulated building, which that is where, shows your payments on your BAB's interest rates and your payment from the city on their share of the evidence building
And the
ramp.
ramp.
Yep. And that's based off the estimated price. We will probably finalize that billing sometime this year and get an actual price from an actual payment from them, as well as we will renegotiate that, because when we started that, we had certain percentages of rebates on our BABs and our Z bonds from the federal government. And they, of course, then the sequestration happened, so they pay us less, and the city needs to pick up their portion.
Did we change something on lien payments from 2014 to 2015? Because you had 117,000. Did they change their programming or what they were
Yes, there
doing?
was a time when we weren't turning them over because we were rewriting the lien program.
Okay.
So we couldn't turn them over to them, so they were only working on the really old ones.
Okay.
And then once we turned that over, of course, then we're back up to about that fee, and it makes a difference where it's coming from. But yeah, there was a dip, but we've estimated back to where we think they should collect back to the old ones.
Thank you.
And that's all based off of history. I actually use a couple more years than are there. But, it's still a guess. If we didn't get that liquor tax reversion, $800 every year, I just don't know where we'd go broke. I did find out what it's from.
Yeah, good.
It is from, because we met the new liquor person at the state. If there was a town that is now dissolved and they were collecting liquor tax at some point in their history, this is their revision of liquor tax. And why we get it on this town and we don't get it on the dissolved towns, but no other town is beyond me. But I did find out I've been here for almost 40 years, and that's the first time I found out what it was. Nobody knew before. And are you to the bond payments then?
No. When the revenue estimates for domestic abuse fund, which you already went through.
Accumulated building and healthcare trust, those are just based off of
Yep.
history again.
Yep.
Yep. And do you have my long-term thing?
Yep.
Okay, basically that was just the personnel was just a duplicate of what I showed you or already told you. And of course, it's a plus and minus in elections for the about 2,000 hours that we don't have in off-election years. Just so you know, any election that we budget for one election in an off-election year, because we know we'll do one city school election. This year, we will do 3, and other than a runoff, the other 2 run around $60,000 apiece. So we will have some additional revenue in there. And at this point, I think I can absorb the extra costs, but I may have to come in, since we only budget for one, because we had to buy the ballot stock for the second election and pay the election workers. But they reimburse us everything. And now the feds have come out that we can't share our scanners with them. So we have to charge them for scanning use.
My gosh.
$22,000 a scanner per election. So I don't know if we'll be doing their elections, but they don't really have any choice. So we're trying to figure out how we can make it, depreciate them down to next to nothing and then charge them. We haven't quite figured out.
You can hire a lot of people for $22,000 to count them by hand. Or
Yeah,
bake
and in
them.
their elections, it's small enough. Anyway, that's the change. It's a plus and minus, just the seasonal workers in an election year. The equipment, it's a reserve for the new equipment. Just because we projected out 5 years, we actually have a folder that we use to fold the ballots. And that wears out about every 5 years. And we're hoping it lasts the 5 years because planning and zoning is now using it for something. We used to use it for all of our, we still do use it for all of our checks. So we fold our ballots and our checks. Printers, that's currently in my, those are, that are in my budget, and those we go through about 2 a year. Information services and computer hardware, you see that we replace a computer, we're on a 4-year replacement. I think it's 3 computers each year, plus 1 laptop in an odd year. We provide the computer for down here, one of them, we provide the computer to the courts so that they'll load their vouchers, so Holly or I don't have to. That's where the laptops come in, and we have one for training that we kind of back and forth with. And we really never replace, we've got 6 computers up front we never replace. We just move the old ones that we're supposed to give away up there until they break. So that's what those are. And then, of course, the new financial software reserve. To replace that, I wouldn't budget for capital improvement projects. We love our offices, by the way. And we're just, goals, we're just hoping to be able to get through without,
Breaking down.
breaking down on the ballots. Yep. So, it's a guess on staff. We haven't added staff for so long that we really don't have any idea. And we really service, other than elections, we serve the county departments. So as of course, the help of having an HR department alleviated some work, so that helped us. Computerization helps us a lot. And having to replace people. So that was just a guess is what we'd have to do those. And on the anticipated budget, I just put in 5% a year. I had no idea. I don't think mine's ever gone up that much.
Ms. Julie, I'd like to thank you and your staff for all your help on things that I've learned in the last 6 months, and your help on some of this budget. I wouldn't be able to do or figure some of that stuff out.
Well, that's okay.
And you did tell me when I was running for election, you need help, Deb, you come in. And
Just come in.
And you have been there, so thank you.
Did you want to go over the bonds? Okay. The fair bond is being paid out of the fair fund, which again is out of county consolidated, so it really doesn't make any difference other than it is a specialized fund. And as you can see that the principal, those bonds, and we've refinanced those once, though we did not extend the number of years, mature in 2017. That bond payment has been used for repayment of the master plan bonds, so that you can't plan on spending it. The board made that decision. The rest is, of course, minor miscellaneous revenues that come in on every levied fund that are quite minimal. The next are your bond payments that are made out of accumulated building. I have tried to label them so you can kind of have some sense of what they are. The year, of course, that's the year we either sold the bonds or we refinanced the bonds. What it's for is labeled next, and then if there's any kind of note of what type of bonds they are, and then I have the mature date, and you have on any bond issue, that's the actual principal, interest then, and then the service fees. Those fees are paid mostly to the financial institution that handles our bonds for us in case they have to do whatever they do with bonds, and they file reports, and then every so often we have to have an arbitrage calculation, and that's what those fees are for.
I'll probably come in, Julie, and just see kind of how that works, just so I have a inkling on what future projects and what those fundings are and stuff, and maybe you have that too, so.
Yeah.
I appreciate
all
that.
the payments, you'll see I have mature dates, I have balance dues on everything as of January 1st of the next budget year, just so you can have some indication of what we have out in debt.
Okay.
If you'll notice that the jail, third line down, the 2008A jail completion matures in 2016. That money was not allocated to the repayment of the master plan bonds. So after we make that final payment in 2016,
Okay.
we do not have that used as a payment. Any of the other ones, the master plan COP, 2 lines down, that's 620,000. That, of course, is master plan itself, but those COPs will be paid off, and that will go to start paying the BABS bonds off. So that kind of frees up 375,000 that you could or could not add to that other 700,000 that you have levied, or you could use it and not levy it, and it could go back to general fund. On the very bottom is the calculation if you wanted to get, this is where I got the extra 800,000, if you wanted to get to the maximum levy in accumulated building. Maximum levy would bring in about 6.6 million. We need 4.2 million right now for our existing bond issues. The 800,000, this is Mike's capital improvement budget. That is his money to spend. That comes out of accumulated building. The 709,000 is the master plan sheet that I showed you, which left 833,000, and that's where I came up with, I just rounded it to 1.5, but I took that out for you.
Thank you.
And I will add it back in if you want to, but I kind of wanted to see what it would do to our reserves. It lowered it down to, I think, 1.8 million to get to 18%. And that's quite a jump from 18 to 19. If we don't, and I don't know what you're doing with the special reserves. Those are what carried us through in March, which in remembering, that was the board's drive, is that yes, we aren't going to spend those this year, so we don't have to have the 20%. When you start using those up is when we need to start increasing our reserves from the 18 to the 20, almost dollar for dollar. And we've got over $1 million. We have almost $1 million in there for crisis care. And we have $375,000 in there for catastrophic hospital, which I don't know when the last time we touched that. But as you reduce those, that takes away that cushion that we use in March and September.
And that isn't included in on the 18%, or it is? For reserves?
When we were at 18% reserves, we don't include that.
Okay.
But we were in the hole, and that's what we used as the cushion, which was the board's point at the time, is that, well, we have quite a bit up here in special reserves, so we don't need to have 20 plus that. So we'll have the 18, and then we'll use that, and that's actually what it worked out to.
So it gave it 20.
So if you add them back in for cash, we're right at the 20. So, and if you want to increase it as you decrease those, you don't have to do it all in 1 year either. So that saved you some money, because that's an awful lot of budget to cut. You have used CPI. I have to say this, you know me, you do have that the highway department has a lot of needs, but so do your other county departments. You levy over $2 million in county general that you give to the highway department for roads. If you look at what highway department fund has gotten over the last 5 years with increase in funds, it more than doubles that. Their 20% will about pay that. Also, we will be if you don't initiate a wheel tax, we will lose any access to the big money. We will be a donating county to almost $3 million into that big fund, which I understand is supposed to be used for bridges. I have no idea what shape our bridges are in, but we will not be able to touch that money if we don't have some kind of wheel tax. Now, they did admit, let me finish.
You're okay, honey.
At that last meeting, at Black Hills Association meeting, that, we'd been hearing that you had to put the maximum in to get the maximum money out of the big fund. They said that every project request that comes in, and cities can request this big money, and they don't have to put a wheel tax in, nor do we have to give any wheel tax money to them. That only if 2 projects come in that rate the same on this point system, will they then look whether you're levying the maximum wheel tax or not? If you are, you get precedent. That's the only time that they look at how much of a wheel tax you have in, which is totally opposite of what they first started coming out on. The problem is they still haven't gotten all the rules made up. We got a note today that we got a new accounting for the STP funds. And I don't know whether Tom's got those in his budgeted revenue or not. I haven't got an answer back from him or how much that's gonna bring in. But his revenues increased by 20% just with the license plate fees.
And that's what scares me about the wheel tax, it's the defined rules and how they keep changing. And number 2, I thought we weren't getting any STIP money, they weren't gonna do STIP money anymore, but we just got a paper the other day about STIP money that they're giving away till 2019, so. That
Yeah.
didn't make any sense either, so.
Well, they don't even have a
until-
law in the books either.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Until they define the rules, that's hard for us to define a wheel tax because we could get from STIP and other things, because we do have money in there now for some of our stuff, if I'm correct, George.
Yeah, but we can't give up that kind of money.
But here's the rub, though, on that,
Either way, but
on that bridge improvement fund. We were briefed by Tom and the guy from DOT, or highway guy, and a guy from DOT, that 15 million per year, 7 million comes from the counties. So the rub is, what happens if we don't kick in? We all go to jail?
Well, I don't think we have a choice.
You don't get a choice whether you kick in.
Well, we don't.
No.
Will kick in.
You will kick in.
They won't send you the money. That they owe us some money, they keep, that goes into that fund before we ever see it.
Yeah, we send all the money into the pier and then they divvy it out and they send our portion back.
But the 7 million from the counties, are they gonna send us a voucher?
No, we send it to them as we collect it.
No, wait a minute, collect from what?
They get it's coming from motor V fees for the big fund, and part of the other fund, which is peeled off from the motor V fees, that we send them every month.
They got that figured out.
Yeah.
Well, they're
We
still
will
writing the
not
rules,
send it to
as I
them.
understand it, but,
wow.
but that 7 million comes from the counties, that's about 1 million from this county, roughly, if it's per capita. So,
No, I've been told we'll send about 2 to 3 million into the big fund.
That's what I heard.
well, 7 million split population-wise, that's 1 million for us.
Oh, heavens, no.
It's 2.69.
We're about 1/7, 1/8 of the population of the state, right?
I would think that, at one time, I did some rough calculations, I thought like 1.5 million, but,
Well, if it's per capita, we're about 1/7 or 1/8 of the, anyway.
that's money.
But the big rub is if we don't, they're gonna send us a voucher, are we gonna voluntarily just give them $1 million?
No, we don't send it, we send them the motor V money that Janet collects. That's how they get it. We will never just write them a check. They get it through the motor V collections.
The title transfer they get,
Yep,
the license plate stays here.
not all of it. That's how they get the money.
Oh, really?
And we send it in, and if we don't send it in by the 15th, the morning of the 15th of the month, we pay interest for the entire month.
Well, just like it, like
Not
you do it,
cheap.
okay.
And it is not cheap. And don't think you can send it overnight, because if they're not open in the afternoons.
Wow.
And overnight mail is not truly overnight mail.
So that's another myth, that the license plate money doesn't all stay here.
No, it does not. And the figure I've been told is 2 to 3 million into the big fund that we lose. Now, I don't
2.69.
know if I don't know if they know.
Well, suppose they're writing the rules right now, but the
But even-
legislature really did us dirty.
I don't
They
think
want every county to have a wheel tax, and that's
I don't think
exactly.
they understood what they were doing.
They
You know, they
just-
did it last minute.
Well, they did it last minute. They have wanted every county to have a wheel tax for I don't know how long, and there's too many counties that didn't. And now everybody's putting in a wheel check, and it's just like when we wouldn't do the interstate reduction. If you didn't go down to 55 miles per hour, they held up all your federal funds.
Yep.
And
Well,
they
if you
do
don't-
it too.
If you don't have defined rules, we already know from schools and everything from gambling, if there's no defined rules at this point, what are they gonna stick in their general fund from it? In the end, they're telling us one thing and maybe doing another with no defined rules.
But they haven't
Well-
finished the rules yet.
No.
I mean,
That's what I'm
this
saying.
isn't underway yet, but it's
And you
coming.
can go to the rules hearings, and I'm not sure who's
Not either.
deciding
It's coming.
what the rules are gonna be, but no.
That's what
But
I'm
most
afraid of.
counties are putting in a wheel tax from what I've heard.
So, may I ask this? If we decide to do a wheel tax, and we've talked about how we should try to time it so that it would be on the primary election ballot. So if we do that, we would really need to pass this wheel tax the 1st of January of 2016.
Yes.
And then there's 20 days of referral after it's posted?
After it's published,
Yeah, published rather than posted. So then, we were discussing this at lunchtime. So the start date, if we pass it the first meeting in January, and let's say it's not referred. And so when can it be effective back to January 1?
ordinances are usually effective if they're not referred the day after the 20 days.
Okay.
And it's the last publication in the last paper. Since we have 3 in their weeklies, they don't always publish on the same day. It's always effective the 21st day
After that.
after the last publication in the last paper.
So let's say that we do this the first part of January. It doesn't get referred. So it would be effective the very last week of January? How
No,
would- how does?
It takes us, see, you don't approve the minutes until the next meeting. It depends upon,
It's an ordinance, there's 2 readings, you won't get it done till the end of January. It
Okay.
takes 10 days to get it into published.
About
At the
60
end of
days.
February, it'll be probably the soonest.
What I'm trying to figure out is, when we do this, I'm getting hung up on the fact that if it isn't really effective till March 1, then the people who bought their license tags January and February won't pay it, and then they'd have 2 more months because they can do 90 days out, right? That they don't have to, they can purchase their license tags early. So I'm getting hung up with the idea that we'll go 3 or 4 months into the year, and those folks won't have to pay the wheel tax, but the rest of them, the remainder of the year, do. And I'm struggling with whether that's fair. how we
Here's
do
what's
it.
wrong with your philosophy.
Okay, tell me.
Because not everybody's due in January.
I
They're
know.
due every month of the year.
I
So,
know.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the people let's just say May on to the rest of the year will pay it.
Yep.
But everybody before will not. And that bothers me that we go with all those people who could buy their license tags earlier in the year by law. They don't have to pay the wheel tax, but the rest of them do.
If I buy a car February 28th, I don't pay for January and February either.
Yeah.
You see?
It's just like roll call, right? It's just like roll call.
yeah, that's what.
If that isn't a problem for
It's
people,
roll
fine.
call.
Well, I don't know that I would say it's not a problem, and I very much agree with your point.
You.
But the state did it, they put everything in April, and what happened? Anybody that could buy their license plates, and
That's
KJ
what
went
I'm
out and bought her
saying.
brand-new car on the last day of
That's
March.
what I'm
Pick a
saying.
date.
But you pick a date, and I don't know if on that you can make it, and this would probably be something more for Jay, in ordinance, if you make it effective January 1, 2017, I don't know if you can do
How you
that.
gonna do that? If I come in and get
Maybe
my
the
license,
ones-
you're gonna send me a bill?
Maybe the ones with the license plates that had problems this year.
No,
they get double
January the
stacked,
next
so
year.
I don't
Oh, I
think,
think you probably do that ahead of time.
I don't think there's
don't
anything you could
know.
do.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that, put a date in.
So if we did it, here's where I'm heading. So really, we're talking that you need to run it through on January to hit the primary. But if we did it in December and got, or end of November, and got it all taken care of by January 1, would that work for timing for the primary election if they're not at all?
Far out, yeah. You have to have it within so many days I'd have to check how far out you'd have to have it if you're referred within so many days.
I mean, I guess either way, it's not gonna be fair, I suppose, but it just seems like that's not
Yeah,
fair.
I didn't think April, but they put their laws in July, and you come in July, and you can't even buy them early.
That's right,
If you're a December, you can't buy them in. I couldn't buy mine in April.
that's right.
That's the way it's been working. And that's why usually government, by the time you process everything, it's slow, so
Yeah.
either way.
Well, government just isn't fair. They're not meant to be, I guess.
But the point is, that if we could figure out how to do that so that we can be fair, that's what I was searching for.
Well, because everybody thinks right along with you. I mean, we heard it, well, how come they picked April 1st?
Yep.
Yeah.
Even if they'd have done it in July, it'd have been, oh, the first 6 months, they got theirs free. But at least then I could have gone in.
So one way or another, you still have people having issues.
I'll double check that.
And Annette's here, maybe she could help us too.
Did I hear Commissioner Buskey would volunteer to spend his spare time in Pierre on this rules committee and this rules writing business and get,
I wouldn't mind going to it.
Be
I've
nice.
never been to a rules committee meeting. I have no idea if you have a say-so or not.
It would be nice to see how the process is done. You'd be good at it.
since we've got a big role in it, if somebody's got time, it wouldn't hurt.
I think that's
All right, and I don't know how they can deny us.
I can find out what it is, I guess.
I think Holly knows when they are.
Yeah,
I suppose
she
probably
has,
does.
I see her in there.
yeah.
I think she's told me when the rules hearings are.
But
We
the
should
gal-
be able to find out.
The gal from DOT told us in March that, as I recall, that she's looking for help writing the rules.
Well, we can do that.
Oh, we
can
could
write
sure
the
do
rules.
that.
We love to read
Tell them
those
where they
rules.
go and don't
Oh,
shine.
well,
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I'm
Annette,
going to
you're next.
physical therapy because we're running late. I said 2:00 and it's 3:30.
Annette, you're
And we're
next.
not running late, I see, but,
I'll keep you.
and I agree with the treasurer, so.
I came early because I heard it was $1,000 a
We're-
minute if
we
you
were
were
doing
late,
really
so I
well.
thought maybe.
Well, and actually, to continue our conversation, how we do that is going to affect your office even more.
It is, and we actually, it benefited us a little bit to have it effective April 1st, even though that was that emergency, is because people's registrations aren't due in April, and you can renew up to 90 days early.
Right.
So that only then
That's right.
affected 2 months' worth of people. So April and October are the only 2 months out of the year that people's registrations aren't due because of
Because of the
Real
way
estate.
they set it up.
Because of
with
real
your-
estate.
Yeah.
taxes, yeah.
It's a real estate. And the percentage, I believe, I'll double check that of the registrations. I think the percentage is like 63% that is retained by the county, but I'll double check that.
Thank you.
Wow.
You thought we got 100%.
Yeah, license plates, yeah. Thank you.
I will double check that, though.
You can tell us what you want us
Are
to
we
hear.
ready?
You bet.
Okay. Well, I am standing in front of you to request $1,166,331.88 for the treasurer's office. I'm swallowing hard with that amount too. We've sharpened our pencils a lot this year and last year as well. Janet has put out a narrative for you to explain all of the grave differences that are on there, but I'm willing to assist with that as well. The first one that, as a taxpayer, of course, is gonna step out is that postage fee. Were there any questions on that with it being a new plate year? Postage has gone up terribly. You'll see that we also, the revenue, we do expect to get the majority of that back as well, but it's $5 a plate is what the state statute requires us to charge. That went up in 2009. It used to be $4. But what's really increased is the postage. So I have those figures too, if you'd like to see.
Sorry to interrupt you, Miss Annette. Who pays that? $5 and the other, or is that just,
Who's ever registering their vehicle, they'll be paying $5 a plate, a set of plates to be mailed out to them. So, as opposed to right now, you pay $1 to get a registration.
Right.
But January 1st is a new plate year. Everybody's going to be getting new license plates. So we'll see that influx in,
it'll be $5 instead of $1?
right?
And do we give people a heads up on that ahead of time? Do you have it posted anywhere?
South
or
Dakota state
anything?
law is we're replacing plates every 5 years.
Right.
And to save that, I believe the figure was like $5 million that they save by skipping a plate year.
Okay.
To roll those out, and that was a huge deal then. It's been in the paper, and the state's been sending out news releases, I believe, but they're working on, they've got all new employees there now too that are working on the system to better help the counties with that. But as far as getting the word out, no, that might be something that we
Post
could
on
do,
your
like,
desk or something when people are coming in, so you already know.
our staff is, I
we're-
mean, we get more, almost everybody that does come up says, is asking, can I get a new plate now? Because their registrations are good now till 2016, and so they're, when they're renewing, and so they're expecting the new plates right now, but it doesn't start until January, and you can't get them early either. Those, just the people that walk in the door the first week in January are the ones getting the plates, even though.
Yeah, word of mouth is good, and you guys have a lot of people run through your office, so maybe even just those plastic little things that say, don't forget or however you guys do it.
Good idea.
I think I've seen
I thought
it.
you were gonna say we have a lot of big mouths. That's what you were, but yeah, that's a good idea.
No, but I've just seen it on different places for reminders when their fees are going up, so.
Russ and IT did help us with the board, with the electronic board that's there, and there is a plan to get that on there too of, remember, 2016 is a plate year, and give them information regarding it, as well as once the state has made a definite decision on how they're gonna do that. It's coming,
So tell me the process one more time. I come in, and when I get my fees this year, or pay my registration fee, that's when I pay the extra $5? But you said you're mailing them
No,
out.
this is
Tell
only
me.
mail. This is
Okay, just the people that are mailing it.
Right, it's just based on what, and a guesstimate, quite honestly, of how many registrations that we mail out to people.
Okay,
If they continue to request their registrations through the mail, the postage it's $5 per plate.
okay.
Influx of that is gonna happen with the front line of those that have multiple vehicles that are in town that are used to mailing. They're not gonna wanna pay that extra $5 if they have several plates. That means the lines are gonna be
Bigger this
very
year.
long, yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because just the fee, they're not gonna,
Right,
right.
right.
You'd be surprised
So
how
it's
many
huge. A
people will
plate
do
year
that
is
just
huge.
because- Yep, just because they won't pay $4 extra.
We need to be prepared for it,
And
definitely.
then, won't they, on the little white cards that we get that from Pier, that say that it's time to renew your plates, won't they put the $5 on there?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They put they'll.
I was thinking I'd seen that amount on there.
Yes,
Okay.
they'll be letting people know that on the mailings, because they do now. They tell them how much they need to send in for the postage, so that'll be switched on those cards.
Right, and we've seen what assessments do and what they don't see on those cards, so. I'll be
Exactly.
surprised on there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in the beauty shop don't know, so.
This 100,000 should net out to zero though, shouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're, based on the calculations that we did, yes, it's still really a $10,000 request for postage in there. If you look at, I mean, it's $90,000 difference, and we've got on the projected revenues of $110,000.
Okay, so the, you know,
Yeah.
the plate thing should zero out though. Okay.
Any other questions on that one? That's a huge one for us. And in fact, when we were doing the budget, in May, we even got notice that the postage went up another 2.5%, so we had to redo again. So hopefully it'll stay where it's at.
Professional services, asked the auditor what her number was, and I guess I have to ask you, the treasurer, what her 61,000 for professional services is.
We have a service that creates our real estate taxes, and they're mailed out from there. The professional services are included in, the fee that they charge us is included in professional services, and it also includes postage for that. So we started doing that in 2014 is when we worked with, and it's Wells Fargo is who we use. That's a huge portion of that. We also have on a daily basis, we have the cash picked up from the treasurer's office and taken to the bank. So it's the armored car services that are there. And between those two, let's see, there is one more. Hold on just a second. Shredder services. Oh, and a big one, I should have remembered this one. The title company that we receive the O&E reports on when we're taking tax deed action on property. That's another big one. That's close to about 10,000. The mailing out notices, if you want a breakdown of that,
That's fine.
Okay. Rapid delivery, we now have our mail, just like all the other departments, is all picked up now and brought to us here rather than somebody going to the post office, which I guess we don't even have a choice to do that anymore. And then we do have one copier that's that's in there too. I guess that's our contract, though. That's our contract line item, not the professional services.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Annette?
Please ask me about the two new FTEs we'd like. We really have tried to do without those. I can't stress enough to be able to get someone in that position trained. It takes about a year, and then again, when the laws change, it's again in July that we're having to almost not retrain, but of course it's all new stuff that comes through for the staff. It does take a special person to be sitting there and working with the taxpayers of Pennington County, good and bad. And my concern is that if we wait until 2016, if we're allowed to get 2 FTEs in January, that we won't be prepared for that influx of work that we're going to see in January because of the new plates. And I would just like you to maybe consider if we could, if you could allow us to have one of those full-time employees added now, halfway through this year, we would have them trained and ready to go in January. We're utilizing right now the senior volunteers. We've got a part-time gal that comes in. Of course, we have the SSTs, and we're looking into Western Dakota Tech. They have students that can come and intern as well. But we really do need somebody that is there for the long term and is keeping up on those laws and trained on the computer system as well. So
Well, since I've been here, you've been one of the busiest offices I've seen, and I visited many of the offices and have watched many of it from coming in, so you guys do some tremendous customer service up there as well, so.
Thank you. The public demands a quick response time. You guys know it. If it doesn't happen, you hear from it. And sometimes there's days that, depending on what type of customer is ahead of the person, ahead of the, in line, the transactions are all are different, take different time. But in January, with the layout of the new plates and the transaction time is going to increase, that's for sure. So if we have an additional staff member that's trained and ready to go, that's gonna for sure be a benefit to the taxpayers in their wait time.
And I don't just think it was because of license plates. From what I've seen in there, I think you needed it before, so just from my observation.
Yeah, we've certainly tried. We've looked in every little cubby for extra help, for sure. Wouldn't ask for it if we didn't need it. I'm sure you guys are aware of that, so.
So Annette, do you, if we go ahead and do this, say, you'd hire somebody in September, do you think you could absorb it, or would you need to come for a supplement towards the end of the year?
Janet and I have been looking over the budget, and with the amount of money that we have left over for in our current year budget for overtime and for the part-time help that we have right now, we would be able to absorb it. We just had one of our current FTEs that we're replacing now, we just went through, it takes a long time to go through the hiring process. And we are just now from April 1st, and it took a little longer this time because it hit April, and we really didn't have the time to focus all of our energy, which is what we need to do when we're hiring staff. So we waited until May. We're ready now to hire for that position, and we have some good candidates from this time around that we would like to be able to consider if we would be able to absorb it. We would find a way, I believe, yes. It's only for the rest of 6 months.
So could you, for me, I think get on the agenda, have that all figured out, show us how you can afford it in this budget, and ask for a vote next meeting.
Thank you. I'll have it done tomorrow. Appreciate that. I will.
You know what you're doing.
I'll do it.
I think you'd have, if you don't have FTEs available, you'd have to ask for that too, besides the money, or authorization to spend the money. Because your FTE represents money.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I looked at first before I even wanted to put that out there of not just me, of course, Janet as well, and the overtime hours. I mean, you can give your employees overtime, and they are appreciative of that, but when overtime hits in the treasurer's office, they're already working every single minute. It's customers right after the other, that it's really wearing them thin. So we felt that we could utilize the amount of money that's left in the overtime for that too. So I'll take a look at that as well. I appreciate the insight there.
So then the other part of this would be that you would have 17 employees, FTEs for next year rather than 18, and it would change your expense, right?
And be requesting one for next
Correct.
year.
So
just
there's
asking for an additional.
So there'd be a couple of different things you
Tweak
kinda
my,
get.
yep,
Yeah.
So
yep,
based
I'm
on
with ya.
Based on this process, and we're letting this department head do this, do we just do that? And should we ask during budget if anybody else could do the same process now? Because they need people. Could they absorb FTEs into their budgets? Can they come to the next meeting and do the same thing?
They can?
I'm just saying, maybe we should have asked that of all departments.
If you want to do it that way, we
I
should.
think it'd be a good thing they could talk about in the department head meeting. And
But you see what I'm saying? I didn't know that was something we could just tell them to do right on the fly on a budget, but I'm not saying it's wrong, and I'm not saying you don't need one. I'm saying, based on this process, I didn't know that if people could absorb them now, that they could just bring them up, and now that they know that, that's cool. Thank you.
And really, generally, Deb, we don't do that unless it's an extenuating circumstance. We don't just
Right.
freely do that.
But from what I'm seeing, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances,
So
so.
just for clarity, what we're really asking the treasurer to do is just come to us with a request for an additional FTE,
Yes.
and then everything else follows. If she can fund it without anything from us,
Right.
if we authorize the FTE, she's good to go. Is that,
But she'll have to change next year's budget as well to reflect one less.
And do you understand what I'm saying? When we were going through this process, if someone else could absorb it in their budget this year, like the different departments, maybe we should have pushed that forward, but I'm good.
but if her request is right now, that's what she has to do to get it passed, is have us
Correct.
authorize an FTE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if she got the funding, she's good to go. If she doesn't have the funding, that's another step.
Correct.
Okay.
And we waited with the information from the state or to even know what for sure they were gonna do, because we, it was, I think, February of this year before they ever decided that, yes, they were gonna go ahead with the new plates, or, rather than extend it another year, or it was kind of a guessing game, with how they were gonna do it as well, so, ideally, it just would benefit us to hire now, so that the training's out of the way and a person's ready to go in January now that they've.
What's the
made it.
design look like? I guess I haven't seen it.
The governor's supposed to wheel out the
Oh, big
design,
deal.
so
Okay.
one of those, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you, no. No, we were sworn to secrecy, that we seen it for a moment, and that was it, so. Any
Thanks, Annette.
other
Anything
questions
else
for
you want
me?
to tell us?
Oh, thank you. Those were my two big things. No, that's it, unless you have any additional questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll recess till tomorrow.
Nice.